Hi, I'm Josh Gonzalez, and welcome to Meld. This is a podcast where I have in-depth conversations with some of the brightest people in the known universe. My aim is to spark deep conversations around interesting topics to find the tools, tactics, and philosophies that we can all use in our daily and creative lives. In this episode, I sat down with Shane Peterson and Micha Saade, the co-founders of Namastetics. Namastetics is a direct-to-consumer yoga wear brand that focuses on sustainability and boho fashion. I invited them on the podcast to learn about their experience building a successful direct-to-consumer fashion brand because at the time of recording this, I'm getting ready to launch Longboy, a direct-to-consumer apparel company along with my partner and girlfriend Marissa. Details will be disclosed about this project in a later episode, but if you are interested in checking it out, you can go to longboy.co, that's LONGBOI.co, to see our wiener dog-inspired apparel company before we launch. So this is basically a double episode. If you're looking at the time code, it is around 2 hours, and the first half of this episode is dedicated to the story of how Shane and Micha started the company. And there's lots of great stories, philosophies on starting a company and building a great company culture, along with the story of how and why Shane and Micha became entrepreneurs in the first place. And it's a really, really inspiring story for anyone looking to kind of get out of a rut or start something new. And I think this is a great time to do that. So there's lots of great stories and great tips along the way there. And then when we get into the second half of the episode, it's a little more tactical. We get really deep on, product sourcing for e-commerce sites. We get into marketing tactics and project management and delegating tasks and all the things that come with starting a startup and running a business. And since this episode will be released right before Black Friday, we do get into their Black Friday marketing tips for e-commerce brands. So there's lots of great tactical advice here for anyone who's running a business or works for an e-commerce brand. There's lots of great tips here. And honestly, there's a lot to unpack here. And since I'm learning the ropes myself, I ask a lot of detailed questions and I wrote lots of show notes here. So you can find the show notes and all the links that we talk about in this episode at joshgonzalves.com/podcast. That's joshgonzalves.com/PODCAST. And you can also find a direct link in the description of this podcast if you're on any of the podcast platforms or YouTube or whatever. I do link things to make it easy for your life. And if you're just finding out about this podcast now, or you've listened to a few episodes and you're not quite ready to commit, I think it's time that you subscribe. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or the podcast app of your choice where you prefer to consume podcasts that has a subscription function. You can definitely subscribe. Please do, because I always post episodes at least once a week. And if you find anything interesting or useful in this episode, please share it on social media. Share it with your friends, your network, your coworkers, your friends, your family, anyone you think might find this interesting. I'd love to share this knowledge. It's why I do the podcast. And without further introduction, let's just get right into it. I'm Josh Gonzalez, and this is Meld with Shane Peterson and Micha Saade. Shane and Micha, thank you so much for joining Meld, guys. Thanks for taking the time off hours to join the podcast.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having us troublemakers on here.
This is awesome because I've been getting really into e-commerce. And as we talked about, Shane, we can get into this later. I just started an apparel brand not too long ago that will be launching soon. So I'm going to look to you guys for all the answers right now. I'm sure you guys don't have all the answers, but I'm definitely going to ask you a lot of stuff because you guys have been there, done that. And I guess we can just kind of start and get people sort of accustomed to you guys. Like, who are both of you? Who is Shane? Who's Micha? Tell me all. Tell me everything, how you guys got started with the company and how you met and how everything kind of unfolded over the last couple of years.
Let's start with the story of how we met because that's a funny one.
It is a good story. Do you want to tell it?
Yeah, okay. So Micha and I actually worked at a place called Lifetime Athletic. It's in like Oakville, Mississauga area. It's a huge, luxurious health club. We were both selling memberships, or slinging them, as we call it, slinging ships. We were both like in a sales job, and Misha's brother was a personal trainer there. He was actually a good friend of mine, and he told me that his sister was coming to sell memberships, and it's extremely competitive in this place for memberships because it's 100% commissions. And so all the salespeople are friendly and we're a team, but at the end of the day, it's pretty cutthroat. So Micha shows up for her interview that day, and I see her sitting over in the waiting area. And I go over there to kind of intimidate her a bit, like rough her up a little bit.
Only if you actually know Shane, he doesn't know how to rough anyone up. So it came off as like major flirting. He's like,
oh, no.
So where do you come from? Like, what's your background? Tell me more about yourself. I just felt like I was like on a first date.
So that was our first interaction. And we worked together there for, how long was it? 10 months, something like that.
Yeah. And our cubicles shared a wall.
Yeah. So when Micha first came, there was kind of a little bit of competition for an assistant sales manager role. And so Micha and I, we were competing a little bit for that role. So we're kind of going head to head with each other. And then I don't know about you. We haven't really talked about this too much, but I hit a frustration point where I was like striving, working. At that time, it was at least 80-hour work weeks in that club selling memberships to try to get this assistant sales manager job. Yeah. And the manager at that time had promised it to me. And then a couple months after working, where I was supposed to have gotten it, but he had delayed it, I was told that he was delaying it again. And the reason he said was that the general manager wanted to dangle the Twinkie in front of me a little bit more.
Oh.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
And then in that was one of the pivotal moments where I thought, like, I'm not a mule. Yeah. Like, I don't want someone to dangle something in front of me. And at that point, I had kind of taken a big pivot from I'm killing myself for this company to, this company doesn't value me and is treating me like a workhorse. Yeah. And so at that point, I had kind of mentally just taken a shift. And I think it was around that point where you and I started to get pretty close. Yeah.
So it's interesting because while the new manager, so when I had first started, we had a different manager, and then he was also promised a job and was just not getting the promotion month after month. So he ended up leaving. And so another manager came in, and then that manager was promising Shane the role. And at the exact same time, and like the regional manager was having phone calls with me being like, we're breeding you for this role. And so it wasn't until we ended up having, like, one day we were both just like, this is fucking bullshit. And we went to have bellinis on our lunch break. And we realized that they were just like doing this and pinning us up against each other. And that's exactly what they were doing, was they wanted to dangle the carrot so that we would just work and die. And we were working like 6 days a week, 12-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week. Like, if you weren't going to hit quota, you would just come in and it was expected. And it was pretty shit. And then I remember, I think this is like the anniversary of it, because it was your birthday weekend. You were going to a cottage with your friends and you wanted to take the weekend off, but weekends, we were not allowed to take weekends off. And so Shane actually told them that he got a concussion water skiing.
Oh, yeah.
So he didn't have to come into work.
I forgot about that.
And only I knew.
Yeah, someone from Lifetime's definitely going to listen to this podcast, and they're going to.
Are you guys still friends with the people that work there?
Yeah, we're pretty close. I think like being in a heated, competitive environment like that, although it does breed a lot of animosity towards each other at times, I think it made us all really close because we were competing with each other, but at the same time, we were all just giving it all out on the field every day together. Yeah. So it did breed a lot of camaraderie, which is why I think you and I did get so close. Yeah. Because we shared a cubicle wall. We started pulling pranks on each other, going for drinks in the middle of the workday. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I would also say that the company did a really good job of fostering teammanship or team building. Yeah. Because you had your own quotas, but then the club itself had a quota. So you wanted other people to hit quotas. So there were times where you would have extra memberships and someone else would be a couple of memberships short from like hitting their quota, and you would just transfer them into their name so that they could also hit bonus, and they would just pay you out on it. Like, we were doing that stuff for each other to make sure that everyone was as successful as possible. Or sometimes we would need help closing a deal, and we would know like, hey, the guys are better with this person or the girls are better, and you'd pull each other in.
That's cool.
like two really big juice heads walking into the gym. I'd see coming in. I'm like, I'm not the guy to relate to these. I'm going to send Micha in. She's going to be great with these two guys. And then we kind of split the commission. So there was a lot of teamwork and bonding there.
That's awesome. How have you guys brought that into your business now? Like, is it the same sort of like culture? Have you guys just taken parts of that? How have you guys kind of like taken that culture into Namastetics?
I think there was a lot of culture we decided we didn't want. I think that was the majority of it. There was a lot of things that Lifetime did extremely well. One of the interesting things they did was they made you memorize the mission and vision statement of the company, and you had to recite it in front of the general manager to get hired. So that was one of the things in their interview process that was extremely unique. And their founder, Bahram Akradi, is actually a really interesting guy as well. And one of the first kind of like mentors I thought I had as an entrepreneur, kind of like more of a virtual, doesn't know I exist mentor, but
just like kind of studying him.
Just kind of studying him, because he built this empire of health and fitness. I don't even like to call them gyms because
they're spas, man.
Yeah, they were so different than that. That he made something that was unique in a super saturated space where everybody was kind of doing the same thing. I think that stuck with me. The uncompromising quality that they had with everything and with the customer experience. I think those are two big things that have stuck with me in terms of what we brought. But like I said, I think some of the things that we decided we didn't want to be a part of our lives were almost or more as important. And it's the same thing with relationships or with anything. Sometimes the things that you don't like or won't work are almost or more important than things that do. I think one of the big things, just to give an exact point, was there was no empathy. And I feel like, at the end of the day, that there was too much emphasis on arbitrary quotas. And that's how everybody on the team felt, was that there was these false numbers that they were putting up in front of us. And if we missed them, we were nothing to them. And if we hit them, we were everything. And there wasn't a lot of empathy at the end of the day for, yes, you missed it, but look how good you did in comparison to last month. Or how's your mental health? For God's sakes.
Right.
And for a company that like preached the healthy way of life, they did not care about the health of their employees. Like, I was in a relationship and I have no idea how we maintained it throughout my time there, because I was working, getting home at like midnight, getting up at 6 a.m. But I think on top of that, the biggest thing is, to Shane's point, is learning what you don't want to lead, but like learning how to lead by example of what you don't want to do. So for those bosses that were dangling unrealistic goals in front of us, telling us both that we're going to be the assistant manager, that's never something we want to do to our employees. So we actively seek out people that can grow with us. And instead of asking them, what title do you want? We ask them, what kind of tasks do you want to be doing in a year's time? What is your ideal job? And let's build a role around that, as opposed to saying, you'll be a manager and you'll be a manager. And, it doesn't suit everyone, and not every job is cut out for every person. But if we can mold roles to fit people, then they're going to be a lot happier. They're going to have a better quality of life, and they're more likely to stick with you, as opposed to leaving after like 10, 11 months.
We've also never had a lot of emphasis on sales numbers, which is kind of interesting, because that was all it was at Lifetime. We've done a really good job of selling Namastetics. We sold a lot, but it's never been a number that was continually at the forefront of people's minds, or we have never placed it there. No. So I think that was kind of like a paradoxical shift too, with Namastetics. We have focused a lot on people's lifestyles, making sure people can live the life they want. A lot of our employees dictate the benefit packages that we give them.
Yeah. So they tell us what they want. I will say, I think Shane and I watch the number a lot, just given our backgrounds. We're always like, what's going on?
The lesson here is, don't watch your sales numbers. That's not it. We watch it a lot.
But like the people who are, building our social media grid or building our influencer partnerships, they don't need to be worried about like, are the sales coming through? Because then you have employees who are worried about like, how's the health of our business? Am I going to get paid and stuff like that? Things that they don't need to worry about, and that they should have the freedom to have like creative control over their jobs.
Definitely. That's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That's like kind of like very base level. Like, you don't want them to even worry about that. It's like having your kid worry if you're going to eat that night or something. Like, we have a place to stay. It's like, no, don't worry about that stuff. You just go do your thing, go draw, go, in the case of employees, go make the work, go design the social media grid, go reach out to influencers, whatever it is that they do. And what I find really interesting is that you guys met up there, you had this kind of culture, and then you decided to create this company together. Like, obviously there's a shift from you guys working full time as employees. And I think Shane you brought something up here. Like, I don't want to be anyone's mule. I don't want to be someone's workhorse. Like, I want to do something for myself. So I kind of want to hear that story. How did you guys decide to then create the business? Like, how did you guys decide to do what you're doing? Were there other ideas? Were there other businesses? Or how did that all come to fruition?
Yeah, I think although we did start a business together, we both have differentiating stories, and we both had a different path that led to the same place in a sense. So I can go first, and then I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear your story. So when I was in university, I kind of took a pivotal switch. I actually wanted to be a physio, and originally actually a gym teacher. And I had read actually a few kind of key personal development books that really turned a lot of things around for me and really changed my mindset. One of the later ones was like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you've heard of it or read it. A lot of people have. But one of his biggest pieces of advice when I was leaving university and had this set career path for so long, and I decided that was no longer the fit. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be in business for myself. One of his pieces of advice in that book was learn how to do sales. And I really liked being with people. I liked the idea of sales, and I had no experience in it. So that's actually why I sought out working at Lifetime. His advice was learn how to do sales, because that's what an entrepreneur does. They sell things at the end of the day, and sell something that you actually believe in. And I was going to school for PIN. So I really believed in a healthy way of life. And this company, that Lifetime, I felt like their values aligned with that. So I felt like I could succeed in selling it. So that's kind of where I started my journey. And that's why I went to Lifetime. And then one day when I was working in Lifetime, a friend of mine from high school came into the gym, and I sold him a membership. And then after the process, it was kind of late at night, he was telling me about this new business he was starting, and it was called Truewood. Friend is Ibrahim Hyder. Definitely look him up. He's an interesting guy. And he showed me his sales numbers for the day. And the second I saw his sales numbers, that was it. I was like, I'm out. I'm out of this job. I saw him creating something really cool that he'd only been doing for a short amount of time. And it was something where, it was always something I wanted to do. And I felt like I had kind of gotten away from it. I got caught up in the day-to-day grind at Lifetime. And, that day that I was talking about before, where I was a mule, kind of, sparked something in me that was like, okay, it's time to leave. And then when I saw him doing that, I saw somebody else that told me it was possible. I grew up with this guy, went to high school. I saw him building a business that had already achieved a level of success, and made me realize that I could do that myself, and I could do it now. So I kind of put a plan together to leave Lifetime. I left. I didn't really have any plan for any business I was going to start. And when I had left, I still remember this. I was terrified to go into any social situation, because just in case somebody asked me what I do, and I would have no answer. So I didn't want to go out. And I had just like a new girlfriend at the time. And it was the most embarrassing thing, going and meeting her family, and they'd ask me what I did, and I didn't know. I had no good answer for them. So anyway, moving forward a couple months, I decided that, e-commerce was something that I was interested in. It was something that I wanted to do, because in addition to my friend Ibrahim, there was a few other guys that were all starting businesses, and kind of like niches you wouldn't expect. Like, they were just starting clothing brands or watches or any consumer good that they wanted. And they showed me this thing called Shopify and Facebook ads. And it just blew me away how easy it was to start any business you wanted. There was no limitation to like what kind of physical product you could sell. And I remember looking at like all the options. Like, I could sell whatever. I don't need to do any product sourcing, to a sense. At the time, this is what I thought. I could just go on AliExpress, pick a product, put an easy site together, get a little bit of branding, start some ads, build it off $1,000 of credit, and move forward from there, bootstrapping it.
Oh, how things change.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. We'll definitely get into that. What year was this? When did all this come out?
This was 2016.
Yeah.
So still pretty early days. Like, I would say like, actually 2016, 2017 is kind of when things started peaking. I mean, for a lot of different industries, right? Where it started getting saturated. How do you guys see that now? Like, do you guys know other people in like the e-commerce space that are getting started?
People getting started, definitely some people that are getting started. It's different in a lot of ways than it was back then. There was, drop shipping was something that was still new and on the rise. There was a bunch of young kids not knowing the consequences of never seeing a product you're selling.
Yeah.
Or not understanding the importance of customer service. And now Facebook offers you a page score. So if people don't get their product and they give you a bad review, it actually hurts your ads, where before that wasn't a thing.
Yeah. And so just kind of connecting the dots to bring Micha's story into it, I had tried selling a couple different types of products that never really got any traction. And I thought, I kind of want to go back to the roots of why I picked Lifetime, was because I enjoyed living a healthy way of life. And I wanted to be able to, relate to customers in a sense and build a product that was around that sort of lifestyle. Still not sure what it was at the time, but Micha's story came in, and that's what really brought Namastetics to life, was her bringing in her personality and the experiences that she had. So I'll let you talk about yourself.
So actually, very ironically, similarly to Shane, I was studying kinesiology, and I also wanted to be a physio because I thought that I wanted to heal people and make people feel better. I was always an athlete growing up, and I very much had a mind, body, and soul approach to health. So I loved everything I was learning in school. And I actually ended up finishing my kin degree early and made my psych minor a major, and minored in religious studies, and very much was submersing myself in this culture of the triads, living a healthy way of life and a balanced life. And so when I graduated university, I really knew that I wanted to do something that was going to help people feel better. But I felt like as a physio, I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do enough unless you're working with pro athletes. People don't typically invest in their own health. They're not going to, they worry about training, but they don't worry about the recovery. And so that's something that I always found really frustrating. And naturally, growing up, while I was in school, I was working, I always just fell into sales jobs. It was just something that I was good at. As a kid, my parents immigrated to Canada from Lebanon. I was the only one of the children that was born here in Canada. And so my dad was actually an engineer by trade. Couldn't work as an engineer in Canada, so that he opened his own restaurant. And I legit used to take stuff from their convenience store in their restaurant, and I would set up a picnic table outside and steal stuff from them and resell it. And always in Girl Guides, I was always selling the most cookies. I was super competitive growing up. And whenever someone would come back from Lebanon, my uncles would come and visit us, I would take all of the good chocolate that they would bring home with them and set it up a little convenience store in my bedroom, and sell it back to my family. I used to take my brother's razors and stuff. And so they all hated me, but I always just had that drive of how can I get ahead, or how can I win? Even in Girl Guides, when I had to sell boxes of cookies, you had to sell a whole case before you could get the next case. So I used to front myself the money to buy out the case so that I could buy another case. Oh yeah. So I was on another level of hustle as as a child. So that was always in me. But my immigrant parents, who were not meant to be entrepreneurs, they hated it. They did it because they had to feed us, but it wasn't their passion. And you could tell how stressed they were every single day. And they did not want me to go down that route. They just said, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be something safe. And then I was following this path. I was in university, and I just hated it. I hated working as a physio aide, and I felt like I need to do something different. I had a few sales jobs. I've been selling life insurance and, a few different things. And my brother, who Shane had mentioned earlier, was living in Toronto with his family and really wanted me to move out here so I could spend time with them. So he encouraged me to apply to Lifetime. And for me, it was something where I was coming off of a sales job that I felt like I was selling death. Literally, it was life insurance. So it's do you want to be a burden upon your family when you die?
Oh
that I know, it's pretty morbid.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to do something that people were going to benefit from while they were alive. And so I loved right away everything the company that it stood for. So I applied for the job. Loved it at first. It was so high energy and so much fun. But then after working crazy long shifts, having a partner at home that you never get to see, never getting to see your friends, all of my relationships suffered. I just felt like I hit a wall of burnout. And I hit a point where I felt like, why am I doing all of this for someone else to just be more successful? And what bothered me about the major corporation, and like I think this is true with most corporations, when you get to a certain point, you stop listening to the people at the bottom, and messages get dropped. So I always wondered why marketing wasn't asking the sales team what the customers actually wanted. They would give us these packages at the beginning of every week, and it was up to us to sell the packages. And we would sit there and we would trash talk these packages for the first hour of a Monday, being like, what the hell's wrong with them? Like, why does it say this?
So disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so frustrating. And I finally got to a point when I felt like I need to leave. So I actually applied to a program called Venture for Canada, which matches semi-recent grads to startups throughout Canada. So Western Canada, Atlantic Canada, Ontario. And I had found out that I had gotten into the program at the end of October, beginning of November. And at that point, I just knew I wanted to work with a startup. I wanted to be able to have my opinion mean something and actually be able to enforce real change. And so at that point, I actually took the weekend off, right before I found out that I got into VFC, I asked to take a weekend off. And up until this point, I had hit my quotas every single month. Like I was a performer. And I got an email from the manager saying that because I wanted to take the weekend off, I was going to be put on a performance improvement plan the next month. And this guy's from the US. So like he doesn't understand like Canadian labor laws by any means.
No.
But I remember reading the email being like, fuck this guy. And I was at the point where I would even be driving to work and I would have to pull over and I would start crying. And I really didn't want to go. And so my partner at the time, Costa, he was super supportive and he's the one who actually pushed me to apply to VFC. And he just said, he's like, you're not going to work today. You're not allowed to go. And he made me stay home. Yeah. And I stayed home for a whole weekend and I literally felt like I ran into a wall. All of the burnout I was trying to outrun for 10, 11 months caught up to me. And I felt like I didn't recognize myself anymore. Like usually a go-getter, usually had this like hustle about me. I couldn't even go across the street to get a cup of coffee in the morning. Like I couldn't leave my bed. And I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, this isn't depression. Like maybe it is. I didn't totally understand mental health at the time. I had also experienced some trauma that year as well that I didn't get to work through because I was just on the go, that everything seemed to hit me and I didn't know how to pull myself out of it. But what I did know was that I didn't want to feel shitty forever and I had to do something to make a change. So I started looking up different things that I could do. I'm not really a drinker, not a smoker, like didn't know like what all of my friends were like, just smoke some weed. And I had no idea how to deal with it. Yeah, right? Good thing I could have been a stoner.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had to make a change. And so I was actually on the Mind Body app. And I saw that there were a few yoga studios in my area that were offering like a 30-day trial for $30. And I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. I'll try a couple yoga studios. If I can commit to 30 days, I'll see how I feel. And I was one of those people who did not think that I could do yoga. I was like, my head is like, doesn't stay calm for long enough. Like there's no way I can control my emotions. Like this is too much for me, which I hear our customers say all the time now. And I will say not even 30 days in, maybe 15 days in, I did a check on myself and I felt like a totally different person.
Just from doing yoga.
Yeah. Just from going once a day. And I like some days that's all I did. I just went and.
So not even introducing meditation at this point.
No, just from yoga. And like just
That's
the
amazing.
yoga studio that I went to, they were really great because they took a meditative approach to the practice and they would constantly be reminding you to like check on your breath, listen to your body, where is your breath flowing? And so those actions and those habits just got me into the place of regularly checking on like, wait, how am I feeling? What am I going through? The physical. And then without even realizing it, you start tuning into the emotional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom became a yoga instructor just a couple years ago. She does it like part-time now, but she said that when she went through her training, it was less about the physical aspect of it. And she said she like cried during it. She said it was like a very traumatic experience or like past traumas would come out and it was more emotional than it was physical. And she said that everyone else in that class said the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that a lot of yoga instructors will say is like, so different classes will be focused on different body parts. And they say that you hold a lot of trauma and emotion in your hips.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have tight hips. And so there were classes where I would be doing like hip openers and I would feel myself crying. And I was just like, what is this? Like voodoo magic? I don't get it. But I started to feel lighter and I started to feel better. And all I knew was that I was like, more people need to know about this. Like what's going on? And so Shane and I actually had connected over a coffee. And at the time he had tried out a few Shopify stores. And we were just talking about like the yoga industry and meditation. And Shane had also dabbled in meditation, not so much like the physical practice of yoga. So that was my thing and meditation was his thing. And at the time, he actually had a store up. He had the early version of Namastetics, which was women's like apparel, selling everything from like headbands and scrunchies and like t-shirts and just like an array of things.
This is like the opposite of what I expected, honestly. Like because like sometimes a lot of people who start these things do stuff almost for themselves, right? Like you see yourself as a customer, but it's interesting. That's not stuff that you would actually buy yourself, Shane. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, he'd buy it for his girlfriend, right? Was the inspiration?
I think it's a good story to tell people for a few reasons. Well, one, so I didn't actually initially go towards women's clothing. I was browsing AliExpress 2016, trying to find good men's gym clothes to sell. And there was a lot of stuff on AliExpress to sell, but it was all very basic. There wasn't anything that was super unique. And it wasn't until I started looking through women's athletic clothing that I started to find things that stood out to me as things I hadn't seen before. And so my mind just kind of gravitated towards those products that I felt like weren't out there and on the market. So naturally, I just kind of went over to the women's side where I felt like there was more being done with fashion than there was for men's. Where
it's interesting that you didn't go the other way and be like, hey, there isn't stuff for men. I need to go all out on this. Like even right now, Lululemon Men is a very small subset of their business. It's really interesting to me that you kind of took that route of, hey, there's a lot of stuff here. I want to run with it. Because we had talked earlier about drop shipping and print on demand. And you said you guys didn't go that route. So I'm kind of interested to hear how you guys did source the clothing.
That way of thinking that you had would have definitely been, I think, a more astute way of thinking about it. But at the time, I was around a lot of e-commerce friends that had started stores up and going, and they were doing six figures within 15 to 30 days. So I was just looking for something that had that exciting, scalable potential that it had. So that was really my motivation back then. It's changed a lot, almost completely 180 cents, but that was kind of the reason why it started in that. And the fact of a man starting a company for women's clothing is interesting. I think an entrepreneur starting something where they're not the end consumer is an interesting point. And Micha knows this as well as anybody you'd ask on my team. Namastetics is definitely a woman-run company. My ideas are the first to get shot down.
That's funny.
Actually, eight of the 10 employees, full-time employees at Namastetics, are all women. So just to preface that. But so that was, kind of the reason that I had kind of stumbled across into that clothing. And, for me, I really do think that as an entrepreneur, you can get super passionate about the consumer's end experience, even if you're not the one has the end product. Mm-hmm. For me, the thing that's been most fulfilling over the years of doing Namastetics has been late nights just looking at our tagged photos and looking at people's captions and reading the reviews online. Mm-hmm. Honestly, those have been the moments that have brought tears to my eyes, even though I don't wear the clothing. So I think anybody can get passionate about consumer experience, and I feel like that is super important for an entrepreneur. You want to
I want to add on to that as well. So I do think Shane discredits himself a little bit here as well. So his ideas are definitely the first to get shot down. And I can give you some examples of some like really crazy ones. However, that is also, I think, why we work so well together as co-founders and having two people, one who lives the brand and wears the brand and one who doesn't. And that's why we complement each other so well. And we're so successful because he has these creative out of the box thinking ideas where, the women on the team are coming from it from a place of like, well, this is what other brands do. And this is what I like. And this is what I see. And Shane's always challenging us to say, well, why not put a zipper on a onesie so that when a girl needs to go to the bathroom, she doesn't have to take it all off. And then I'm actually wearing a onesie right now. And so imagine, and we're just like, oh, well, we don't pee the same way that you pee. However, it's definitely like an out of the box way of thinking. And it forces us to look at things in a less traditional sense and say, okay, so what is it that we can be doing that's innovative? How can we be different from the competitors in like a more functional way? And so having Shane not be the end consumer, he really challenges everything. Why do you do it like this? Why would someone wear it like this? And I think along the way, he's also learned a lot about women's clothing.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But it's also just helped our business so much by having someone who hasn't been exposed to these regular shopping habits.
Totally. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And you get all sides. You get so many different perspectives. So let's go back to the sourcing of maybe the first line of clothing, and maybe you guys can get into how it is now, because Shane, you just mentioned you got it from AliExpress, because obviously that's the easiest way to do it, like especially back then. Now you can kind of find local suppliers and stuff like that, but AliExpress, Alibaba is definitely the best way to go about it. So just kind of walk me through that. How did you find the products? How did you guys decide on like what was your first line? How did that go? And then how did it evolve to what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's interesting. And since the day I started dropshipping in 2016, I was already getting ads saying that dropshipping is dead. So people have been waving the flag for 4 years saying that it's over. And I was starting to think that was happening until COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everybody's shipping from China. Actually, Zach had mentioned the other day that he bought an iMac and it's shipped directly from China.
Wow. So, I mean, that's where they make it, right?
Exactly. So maybe the waving the drop shipping flag is something people will be doing to the end of time. I don't know. But when we were selling clothing and, we're shipping it straight from a manufacturer without any sort of, rigorous testing process or knowing exactly what every product was going to be that customers were getting, or even custom branding it was never going to work as a long-term branding strategy. And it was never something that was an end goal of ours. My friends that I had early on in e-commerce, it wasn't the traditional kind of e-commerce dropshipping crowd. It was people that were creative, that were artistic, that were interested in building a brand, which I think is rare for people who start off dropshipping in our age group. Mm-hmm. So dropshipping was always a means to an end. It was a way of funding and starting a business, getting proof of concept and building from there. And, Micha and I both started numerous e-commerce businesses over the year, and we've always found that to be a great way of getting it going, is because in order to get the money, you have to get sales, you have to get some sort of proof of concept before you can put any sort of scaling strategy behind it. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it eliminates you taking unnecessary risk. Of course, the time involved is going to be that risk, but so that, just a little preface to the drop shipping bubble.
No, that's perfect. And we'll talk about it a little bit later too. That's kind of where we're at with Long Boy, with our brand, where I totally agree. That's the best way to get started. Like you said, people in the circle, I'm just focused on the branding. Our end goal is to build a brand, similar to like Roots or Puma, like just a brand. But the best way to do it right now is to do print on demand. Like I just told Shane before this call, I designed 80 fucking products. I have 80 products that we're launching with. How the hell would you ever do that without print on demand or drop shipping? Like there's not a chance.
Unless you're like in a very privileged position where you have thousands of dollars and you're just like, if it works out, that's great. But neither of us were in that position where we had money to burn to just test it out. And it's like, well, you know what? I'm young. We have time. So let's burn our time and see what comes of it. And maybe we invested, like ads aside, like a couple $100 at the beginning just to start like ordering a few products and refunds. But from there, once you start making sales, it just feeds the cycle. So
that's how you guys funded, completely bootstrapped it. Did you guys take out any funding?
We took out loans actually from my parents. I took out a smaller loan in the beginning to, when I saw things were picking up, to buy a little bit of inventory when we were transitioning out of drop shipping. And then we took a bigger loan in 2017 from my parents to, just speed things along and kind of capitalize on the momentum of Black Friday. But actually, I'm interested. You said that Roots and Puma were a couple brands that you kind of looked up to. I'm interested, like why those brands? What sticks out to you about them?
Well, so with Puma, so I don't know if you've seen the logo a bit. It's a pouncing dachshund, like a wiener dog. And if you look at the Puma logo, it just looks like a grown-up version of that. It kind of has that angle. So I'm like, okay, I can design some clothes, based on how Puma does it. They have like the pouncing cat, and then it has the word Puma, so I can design long boy like within that same sort of thing. Obviously Nike, again, these bigger brands, and then Roots as well. It's the heritage of the Roots. Like, it looks like something vintage. It looks like something that's just been around forever, before our time, even something our parents would wear. And it's something that's just like, seems like it will stand the test of time. And it's just like, it just exists within Canada. It's such a big thing of Canada. And then, I was talking to some people, and they're like, yeah, your niche is like wiener dogs. And I'm like, yeah, like we're going to be like, maybe targeting wiener dog owners and lovers like that we are. But I'm like, once we grow it to a certain point, like, it's not about the wiener dog anymore. It's not about the people who love wiener dogs. Like, I personally don't really give a shit about beavers. I don't fair enough, but I love Roots. I think it's a cool brand. And maybe from that brand, I actually do like beavers a little bit more. So I like that whole animal aspect of it. So that's kind of why I looked up to it. And Nike as well, of course. So just seeing how Nike sizes things, where they put things on clothing, the sizing of like a hat. Cause like, again, like you guys did, we bought, like product tests, like test products. So we got like all this embroidery, like when you think of like the American eagle, like the eagle on the chest. So I put a wiener dog embroidered on the chest. And then when I got it back, I realized it was way too big. I'm like, no, it's got to look like how these brands sell. And it looks like a smaller little crest, but it's there and you know where it is. So that was sort of my idea. And I've never really paid attention to this type of branding. As you can even see here, I'm usually a blank tee kind of guy. I don't really care about branding until I started building Longboy. I started really noticing, what brands people are wearing, like where is it placed? What does it look like? I'm like, oh, that's an inspiration right there. I love the colors. I want to go make a shirt like that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from these bigger brands.
I think clothing is a really unique and awesome and exciting space for that reason, is because you get to see so easily what is being worn right now.
Yeah.
Once especially living downtown, you're constantly seeing what are people wearing, what styles do they like, how has that changed since 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's one of those industries where you can get a lot of product feedback really quickly. Yeah. Just less now because of COVID and everything. But
well, actually, I want to ask you guys even more so with that. Like, now that people are inside,
like with reels and social media.
Yeah, social media, but also like with people being at home, people are kind of going towards athleisure. I know like Lululemon, everything's been flying off the shelves because people want comfortable clothing for home, not just for, athleticism or doing yoga. So have you guys seen that? Have you seen people buying that? Because Shane, you mentioned people tagging you on Instagram. Have you seen that? People just like wearing it at home, lounging around and stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, we had a huge surge of sales in, kind of March, April, May, like I was saying, right when COVID hit and everybody was sitting home and wanted comfy clothing to be in. That comfortable clothing has always been a huge focus of ours. If you look at our site and at our, our kind of aesthetic, it's always been around kind of loungy, baggier kind of boho, free-spirited pants that are super comfortable and more of the traditional tight nylon and spandex legging. So when COVID happened, it was a very fortunate thing for our sales. We had an awesome couple months. And then we sold out of, what we anticipated to be 6 to 8 months of inventory in like a month and a half.
Wow.
So we completely sold out of all of our clothing. And then we had to deal with all the supply chain issues that were happening due to COVID. So we had a huge boom, and then it was followed by, okay, we're not going to get product anytime soon. Just, like you were asking about our sourcing, and we didn't get to that. Maybe we can in a bit, but our manufacturer we've been working with since almost day one. He was obviously experiencing a huge tightened up ship over there. So we just couldn't get anything made. So we had this huge rocket of sales, sold out of everything. And then we had to deal with, all the supply chain issues that came with COVID. So that's kind of what happened. Yeah,
it just seems like there's growing pains in every industry over the last couple months. Like, did you guys feel like a leveling up with all that? Like, have you guys seen those sales continue throughout the year? Or was it just in that like space of the couple months?
I would say we're always leveling up. And I think that's a true sign of an entrepreneur, is that, and Shane actually said this in our group chat today, like, you adapt or you die. And we are very much the type of people that are like, okay, what's the problem? Okay, cool. What's the solution? Let's just pick a solution and go, as opposed to letting yourself get down by every single roadblock, because there are a lot of roadblocks, not just because of COVID, but business in general. Like, we've been sued. Things are always coming out at us. We don't have enough money to fund the next inventory order. We almost went out of business once because a couple of Black Fridays ago, 2 years ago, because we thought it would be a great idea to prepay for an order in full. And the manufacturer didn't deliver on time because we didn't realize that at the time, but we weren't on their priority list. And so we sold all these products and then we didn't get it in time and we had to start refunding customers. So problems like that happen. But for us, we always just say, okay, what's the solution? At that time, when we sold all these products, the solution was Shane hopped on a plane on Boxing Day.
Yeah, so we had just paid for a huge order in full from the supplier. And as you're going to find out, the Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend is an insane 4 days where you do like a whole month of business in just a weekend, actually more than a month.
Yeah.
And so we were supposed to have inventory arrive a week earlier and it was late. And we didn't end up getting it until the day of Black Friday. We're like, we're not going to wait for them to stock this to sell it. Let's get selling it while the cost of acquisition is low and the conversion rates are high. And then it wasn't until after that weekend that our warehouse informed us that we were missing a good piece of the inventory we thought we were going to get that we had now just sold to all of our customers. And so we were just asking questions to the supplier all day and night, calling, emailing, messaging, not getting any replies. So I think it was the next day I got on a flight to China because we weren't getting any responses back from our supplier.
Yeah. And then Shane called me. I was actually out east visiting my family for the holidays at this point because it was just before Christmas or just right around Christmas. And we had made all of these sales on Black Friday. And like weeks later, we still didn't get the inventory. And I think we only got about a quarter of what the order was supposed to be. And they'd given us all of these tracking numbers, but it was dead. And so when Shane got there, he realized that they said because our order wasn't big enough, they didn't prioritize it, even though they had told us that they did. And so he called me and he's like, okay, we have to go through this with them right now. So we were putting a report together on the money that we lost, trying to get a refund and like going back and forth. But I really think the moral of the story is we're the type of people that when we hit a roadblock, it's just like, all right, cool. Like, what's the solution? So during COVID, when our sales started to spike and we knew that we were going to be running out of the popular inventory, we were like, okay, well, what's the game plan? What's the pivot? And so we started really pushing the styles that we've always had the yoga feel like more of like the boho athleisure, which is really what differentiates us from our competitors, like even Nike, Adidas, Lulu. And we always had this more like life wear approach to the clothing. We wanted it to be something that was comfortable. You can sit on your couch and you can lounge, but you can also go and flow in a yoga class and it's breezy. And so because our fabrics were primarily cotton anyway, it worked for both. And so then we just started really pushing the styles that we had inventory in, but were not as popular until we could get to a place where we could get more inventory. And then what we actually decided to do was to take the money that we had made and we invested in employees. So actually during COVID, while all of these companies were announcing like layoffs and pay cuts and all of these things, we actually had job posts out for a full-time fashion designer, a full-time social media manager, and a fashion buyer. Like we were ready to like fully stack the team. And we were like, you know what, now is the time. Like you adapt or you die. And we knew that we had hit our point of like, okay, we have sourcing issues. We need an expert. Let's bring in a designer who knows what the fuck is going on and can help us out of this rut so that we can live another day.
That's cool. So the designer would help you also source the product. So they would actually, you guys design your own products at this point.
Yeah.
We had, ever since we stopped drop shipping, everything was custom designed by us and custom made. But, it was just us figuring things out along the way. We never really spoke to anybody that really told us the actual process for properly fitting, testing, and manufacturing clothing. It was us just kind of figuring it out along the way. And it got us to the point we were at, but we were never hyper confident in the quality and fit of our products and that they were going to be good and last a long amount of time. So like Micha was saying, we did get lucky that, we had just made all this money at the beginning of COVID. All our competitors and clothing companies were laying everybody off and we were pushing full steam ahead. So we got lucky that somebody applied for our design job who had been in the industry their entire life, was an expert in it, who wouldn't normally have applied for a job that we had put out. But just because of the state of the environment, she believed in us. She decided to work with us. And, having somebody that's been doing it their entire life, where it's their passion, the process of manufacturing and designing, who is now showing us the ropes or has been over the past 6 months or so, has been a complete game changer for us. I think there's a lot to be said about the character you build, learning things yourself, but obviously you can take a much bigger quantum leap when you have somebody that you can afford on your team that's that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always hire people smarter than you, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And I would say as an entrepreneur, that's something that a lot of my friends have a hard time swallowing is they're not the expert. And it's like, you do it, you do all the stuff that you don't want to do. You do all of the grunt work just to get going until you get to a point where you're like, you know what, now I can hire an expert. That's what's going to take us to the next level. Like, you know, we did some things that are definitely not in our wheelhouse for so long. And then it's like, okay, now I have to hire an expert to do this. And that'll get us to the next level. It's time to learn from someone else. And she was able to do just that.
Who was the first hire for you guys? Like that first expert hire?
Yeah, I guess Amy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our project manager was our first like hire who actually knew what they were doing in their job.
Yeah.
And then once I knew what a project manager was, I realized how much we needed a project manager.
Yep. That's exactly how it works.
Yeah. So 100%. She was our first kind of expert hire. That was the glue.
We had hired a couple of people like just to start offloading tasks. Like we started to build our customer service team up until a certain point. Shane was like editing all of our photos, and we do very minimal edits to our photos. We like to just show the garment and show the person as it is. But then we hired a designer to actually properly design our emails for us. But I would say, yeah, Amy, we hired Amy in January of this year.
Like that.
Yeah, around then, like around the new year. And exactly to Shane's point, like not only was she an expert in her field, but she had worked for many larger companies. So she was able to come and teach everyone else, this is the way that you're supposed to do it. And we're both quite creative people. So we're always having new ideas of like, oh, I just saw this and we should do this. And we get so excited. And then we execute on like 2 of the 10 ideas.
Yeah. That's how it works, right? It's like, I think that's actually like the perfect, I think, ratio. And that's what Google does. Like, do you guys have OKRs?
So that's actually something. Yeah. So I read the book, hated the book, but love the structure. And so that's actually something that we're pre-planning right now for 2021, is to build our OKRs. And so we've done it before, but we just didn't get all the way through it.
Okay. Fuck the Google version of it. Have you heard of the book, The Buddha and the Badass?
No.
By Vishen Lakhiani.
Okay.
Okay, both of you guys are going to love this book because I've never met or seen someone who has mixed business and like spirituality like this guy. Mm. He's like a Tony Robbins meets kind of a Gary Vee sort of thing meets like the Dalai Lama. Like he's so spiritual. He's got a company called Mind Valley, which I've been raving about.
Valley.
Yeah, Mind Valley is awesome. So he's the CEO, but he also writes books. So his latest book, The Buddha and the Badass, is all about merging spirituality with work. And funny enough, that was the thing. So Marissa and I, my girlfriend, before we started Longboy, we had a VR company together. Still technically do, but through reading that book, she realized that wasn't what she wanted to do. And she decided to literally quit. She's like, hey, like, listen, like, we have to have this conversation. It's during COVID, you know? She's like, I'm not really enjoying this. Like, I'm kind of doing this for you. I don't really love it that much. Like, she went to school for media production. So she just thought she had to do media production, and we're doing virtual reality. And she read this book and then she's like, yeah, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Then she took a back seat and then she learned what she wanted to do. She had passion for the Dachshunds, and she always had a passion for fashion. So we started that, but it was through this book that did that. And if you go further along the book, like there's some tactical stuff, like they talks about building out your OKR. So I'd highly recommend that.
I literally just bought it on Audible.
That's amazing. It's so good. It's amazing. Yeah.
So how is Marissa doing now after leaving, kind of putting that aside and starting Longboy?
I think she's just loving life a lot more. Like she started getting back into yoga. I wish she was here, but she took the dog. So we have a Dachshund, we have a dog. Obviously, is why we decided to make a wiener dog brand. But she's like, yeah, I know. While you're recording your podcast, I'm going to leave just in case the dog starts barking, making noise and all that. So I wish she was here. She can talk to you. Maybe we can do some kind of like 2-on-2, because it'd be good to have her on this conversation as well. Unfortunately, she didn't make it on this.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to hear like how the Longboy inspiration came about.
Yeah. I think her and I will do a podcast, actually, just her and I together, and I'll send that to you too. But I'd love to have the 4 of us, because I think also, like, I'm going to ask you a few more questions. We have a lot to learn from you guys as well. It looks like we're on the same sort of trajectory of going from drop shipping, in our case, it's print on demand, same thing, really. And then it gets to a point where you need to start building your own products. I mean, you guys kind of already got into it. So my biggest thing too is I kind of want to go back into the COVID-19, because I touched upon it with Marissa. Do you guys think that you guys were able to start growing and start taking on these hires because you were digital natives. You guys weren't like a traditional retail brand. You started off as e-commerce. Do you think that was sort of like the key thing for your brand?
It definitely was in some ways, right? Like we didn't have a ton of overhead of physical stores that we had to worry about. There was no increased cost that we immediately had due to people not being in stores. Yeah. So there was definitely more advantages for us than weaknesses that happened with COVID. Like you had mentioned about people wanting clothing for being at home, that was definitely something that was fortunate. I'm not sure how much of that has to do with us being digitally native. Yeah. I think it will being digitally native will continue to be an advantage for us. Mm-hmm. I think there's a ton of opportunity in clothing right now because I think there's a lot of giants that are used to doing things in a certain way that aren't as quick to pivot or aren't built on the fundamentals of what our generation wants to see in a brand that represents the lifestyle and represents who we are. I think end of the day, all clothing is a creative expression of who we are as people. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people that are going to be phased out that don't truly understand our generation. I think some of them are trying to make pivots, like bigger companies are trying to take on more, let's say like environmentally sustainable practices, but everybody knows that those weren't the values that their company was built on. That's not who they are to their core. It's something that they put on to try to, just conform to whatever kind of marketing when there was. So I think there's a huge opportunity.
Jump on the trend, so to speak. Yeah. Rather than actually care about it.
So I think being digitally native, there's a flexibility to it, a leanness to it.
Yeah. I will add to that and say like similarly to like the feeling that I had at Lifetime is like you have this big corporation and there's a disconnect of information between teams. And it's like, how are sales and marketing not talking? And I think once you are dealing with a larger corporation that has a totally different generation leading the way and trying to sell into a younger generation, you're always going to have those roadblocks. But with a corporation like that, it's a lot harder to get rid of your CEO or have that turnover and bring in that fresh talent. Usually that fresh talent is starting at the bottom and no one's listening to them. And I think that's one of our strengths is we bring on our talent and we hire a team and we look to them as experts. And, we're not the kind of leaders that, get the final say or like know everything. It's like, will you tell us? Like, what do you think? Like teach us about TikTok and Reels and what's going on. And we're really open to just being educated by our team to make sure that we are on the forefront and that we're using all of the social media and all of the resources available to us the best of our ability.
Totally. And so are you guys going to continue going digital first? Have you had plans maybe before COVID of like opening up a store or doing pop-ups or anything like that?
Yeah. Like we had always said, like, it would be great to like open up a loft or have a flagship store here in Toronto, something that's like a photo studio, but also a yoga studio and an office, like an all-in-one. Whether we would go into full brick and mortar, that was never really a part of the plan. And especially post-COVID or like, I guess like in the middle of COVID still, it doesn't really seem like it's like the ideal route to take, but it would still be awesome to be able to open up an office and like hopefully something we can look at in 2021.
And Micha, maybe you could speak a little bit to the studios that we're
working. So actually that is something that we had started in August of last year. So just over a year ago, pre-COVID, was that we actually, instead of opening our own brick and mortars, we thought, why not move into wholesale and partner with small studios that have their own boutiques already that are looking to sell branded clothing. And we definitely believe that we do offer something that's a little different than the competitor. Our vibe is a little bit more boho. Our quality is still great, but our style and our costs are just more inclusive, especially with our sizing. So like now we go from an extra small to a 2X, which a lot of our competitor brands don't introduce. And so I had started reaching out to studios. A lot of them were hot leads that were already interested in partnering with us. So yoga teachers who would buy our clothing, wear it around the studio, and then studio owners would reach out about carrying our products. So we started building these partnerships. We have now 6 studios in the US that actually carry our Namastetics brand, and 2 currently in Canada, both in Ontario. One in Ontario, one in Alberta, that actually carry our products. And that was actually one of our OKRs for 2020, RIP. was to build out our wholesale account.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then something that's been really building as of late, now that studios are reopening, is everyone's starting to reach back out about wholesale. And so that is an avenue that we definitely want to explore, because it also eliminates the need for us to have our own brick and mortar and take on that risk. But it also allows us to build our community engagement. So for the people who don't like to buy online, they are worried about sizing, they actually want to try it on, they can go into a studio and do that now.
That's cool. But you guys probably eventually have a section on the website of like where to buy, go to like wholesale section, or yeah, that's awesome. That's way better. Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a huge work from home bubble that everybody's going to glorify it and move towards it. And then everybody's going to realize all the drawbacks of it. And I think, a lot of people already are, but there's like a huge overemphasis on how great working from home is. And we've been doing it for 4 years. We've never had a workspace. So it's funny to see people struggle and figure out how to work from home. And it's like, no, you don't just sit on your couch like you're watching TV with your laptop. You actually still have to set up a workstation. Just because you're at home doesn't mean you're still lounging while you're working. You still have to set up a space that's going to feed your productivity. Yeah. But I think bigger than that is, now that we're working with a bigger team, seeing how important those in-person events and work sessions are. Like, at the end of the day, people are driven by communities. That's why people buy products from brands. It's why people want to work for great companies. Not everybody wants to be sitting in their home working all day. And I know, Josh, you work from home as well. Mm-hmm. But I think there's going to be a lot of misconnection between people for a lot of reasons because of COVID. But I think it's super important for team members to be working together. As much as you can work from Zoom and still have that face to face, you just don't get the camaraderie that you do from working in person as a team. And I think people are really going to miss out on that for the next year.
Oh, I totally agree. I think once it's safe to, I think things like WeWork and other co-working spaces will come back, and it'll be a huge part of the work culture. But what have you guys done over the last couple of months being remote to keep that camaraderie and keeping that culture alive? Have there been things that you guys do as a company, or like through video calling or anything like that?
Well, we just started, so we do Instagram live classes. We were doing it at the height of, kind of March, April. We were doing like 4 or 5, even more a day. Yeah. Now we kind of reduced that level a little bit. But we actually have some of our instructors do classes for just our team over Zoom, which is kind of funny. But so we've been doing that. I mean, there's still a lot of restrictions that will prevent, big gatherings. And there's still, everybody has different comfort levels with it right now and different risks. But we've been trying to do as much work from office sessions as we can through, workspaces in Toronto, and then from kind of like our live workspace here.
Yeah. Do you guys both work at Zach's place?
No. So actually, I typically work from home. Over the last couple of weeks, we actually have been going to the co-working space, Make Lemonade. And so they've actually let Shane in as a guest. It's primarily a female owned, operated, and primarily led workspace here in Toronto. So we've actually been doing our annual planning and like our Black Friday planning from that workspace. But something else, like, the majority of our team and our first hires weren't actually in Toronto or even in Canada. So I would say that is something that we are experts in at this point, is how to make sure that you feel like you're a part of someone's life and a part of someone's family when you don't get to see them. So we have team members that I've never met, that Shane got to go to the Philippines when he went with Zach last year, and that he's met. But, we have weekly calls. When we have calls, the first few minutes is like, tell me about you. How's your family? How are your kids? And, it's making sure that you take the time to actually get to know them as a person. And you do those check-ins on more of a friendship level, like you would if you were in an office and you were, both going to fill up a cup of coffee at the same time. You make sure that you build those personal relationships as well, which is something that we've been practicing for 4 years. So, the people that we've hired, like Bailey, our social media manager, and also Candace, our new VP of product and design. We haven't even met Candace, but we have calls with her almost every single day. So you get to know a person. And then with Bailey, I was having almost daily calls with her, and then a weekly check-in, and you just get to know somebody over time and seeing their face and hearing their voice. And like when I met her actually last week in Toronto, we hugged each other and it was like, oh my God, it's so nice to actually meet you. But I think you just have to learn how to become an expert at like making the best of the digital situation.
Yeah, I feel like there's a level of, again, like going back to empathy. I think for us, it was always about when we were onboarding somebody, like taking it a level deeper than people normally would. Even when I was doing interviews for a lot of the positions, the first like 20 minutes of the interview is just asking about what this person wants that I'm interviewing. What are the goals that you want? What's the job that you want? Why do you want that? Trying to dive deep in knowing that's like, hey, we're not just hiring you for a short amount of time. This is something we want to be a long-term partnership. And I think, us working for a company, then being entrepreneurs, we got a good idea of like what makes people tick. Every one of our employees, we know their kids at this point. We know them super well. So I think it's important to go deep to truly understand who the people are, so that you feel you're not missing cues, because that's what's really easy when you're not seeing people every day, is missing little cues of burnout or not enjoyment. And it's like forcing those questions and the 2-week check-in, the month check-in, the 3-month check-in, and asking questions that, might not be totally comfortable to ask people you just met or strangers, because you're going to miss the things that would be indications that this person isn't healthy, or they're not liking what they're doing and they need something taken off their plate that they don't want to admit that they can't do anymore. Those kinds of things.
Yeah. And it's almost like the last couple of months was a blessing. I mean, you guys have already been doing it for years, but for people who haven't, it's like, this was a great way to meet people's kids and to get to know their life. Like, I know you guys are in Zach's place, but if I'm looking at your back, like, let's just say this was your actual house, I can see where you guys are working. Oh, and this is where you live. I can see how you keep your kitchen. Oh, are things like really messy? Oh, is there something wrong? Oh no, you just have kids. They're running around. Like, do you need help? Like, you have to be, like you said, very observant. It's so true. And I think like sometimes the video calls can help like that, but you're right. It's not the same thing as being in person, but there are also some people who prefer to work at home and they actually are more productive. Like have you guys heard of like the maker versus manager schedule? Have you heard that? I mean, it's a remark now, but like it was a blog post a couple of years ago that went viral. And I'm definitely that maker. Like, there's people like my brother, I'm sure, because you guys like the sales. My brother's like, yeah, like my ideal day is like fill my day with sales calls. I want like 7 calls back to back. I just want to see my Google Calendar just filled up in these 1-hour chunks of calls. I'm like, man, that's literally hell to me. Like, literally, that's like the opposite of how I want my day. I want like an empty calendar of like, here's a creative block. Like, give me that like 4 hours where I can go create. And that's how I'd want to spend my day. So have you guys like been able to find that as well? Again, it's different with different positions, but have you been able to like build in people's schedules that kind of way and kept it flexible?
So I think this is something that a lot of startups struggle with, is a heavy meeting culture. And every time there's something to discuss, it's like, let's book a meeting. And that's something that we try like to decrease, especially as of late. And it's like, okay, does this actually require a meeting? Because as great it is to talk to people, I'm definitely the type that I'm just like, I need to put my head down and do my work. Like if I'm looking at sales or analytics or building out orders, I like to talk to myself while I'm doing math. And I can't have anyone around. And so I love working on my own for that. But something that we've definitely struggled with is having days where it's just full meeting blocks and you don't actually have any time to get any work done. So what we try to do now is ask, is it necessary to have this meeting? And who are actually the stakeholders? Does everyone have to be involved? Do only a couple of people need to attend this meeting? And then can we give other people blocks? Something that I personally do is I'll put in blocks when I know, okay, I have a deadline and I have to finish this proposal for someone. I'm going to block off time so I can specifically work on it.
I feel like another helpful tool for this, if you have people working for you, is to look at everybody on the meeting, look at their salary, calculate what the value of that person is for an hour, and add up all the people on that meeting. That will put it into perspective really quickly. Is this meeting worth the hundreds of dollars it's costing me to bring all these people together at one time? Pooling all of our resources into one place, is it worth it? But I think, Josh, what you were saying, there is, different people that work different ways. Some people are going to struggle in a work from home environment where they want to be around a lot of people. Everybody's got to cope with things in their own way that's going to work. And yeah, I think it's just going to be adjustment for a lot of people. How long have you been working from home, Josh?
Geez. I mean, the only time I've actually worked in like an office was when I worked at DMZ, the digital media zone at Ryerson. So that was when I was a student at Ryerson. So that would have been 2015. So 2016, if I wasn't working, at Ryerson when I was a student, I was working from home pretty much. And so since 2016, at least, so 4 years, probably around the same time that you guys were doing that. And then, what I was doing before was a digitally native company. It was SaaS. It was virtual reality. It was production. Actually, Shane, we've done this only once. I'm so sad that we've only done this once during quarantine. You, me, and Zach all met up in VR with our Oculus Quest. And I feel like that's such a valuable meeting tool. And what I saw this year at Facebook Connect, I almost called it Oculus Connect, but no, Facebook took over Oculus completely.
Like they do everything.
They stole it, man. They just took all of Oculus now. So now it's Facebook Connect, which is like the Apple conference, but they talked about VR and AR. They're almost like laser focus on what they're calling the infinite office. So you put on your VR headset and you can have all your windows open that you'd normally have on your laptop. You can use your keyboard and mouse. And then with the click of a button, you're now in 3D space. You can have meetings with people. So clearly they're like, yep, we need to get on this COVID thing as well. Like everyone is doing remote work. How can we make this better? And I think it's still a step in between. In some ways, video calling, like flat video calling, is better because you're getting facial like little facial cues and stuff. Like I can see you guys like kind of smiling, nodding and stuff like that. In VR, it's hard. Like right now, it's actually at the point where like even if you are nodding or like looking around, it just looks like you're talking to a fucking rag doll. You're like, hey, dude, you still there? Like, like we look to those cues.
The VR meetings are going to be big soon, man. Like after doing that thing with you and Zach sitting in the room together, I was like, why can't all of our Zoom meetings be like this? But I get what you're saying about the subtleties of seeing people's expressions and everything. But now we get to sit on a rooftop club instead of sitting in our apartment.
Then have like a pool table in there and start playing pool. Like it's the virtual office. I think that will be huge for like fully remote companies. And of course, you have to supplement it. Like I read the book, I think it was Rework by the guys who made Basecamp. And they talk about it. It's like, yeah, we're pretty much all remote, but maybe once or twice a year, you have like a company retreat. And that's when everyone comes together and it's a big party. Then you do your OKRs and you figure out your goals for the next year or whatever. But then you're also partying. You're like, hey, like these are real people that I get to work with. So I think that's like a really big key as well. Have you guys done anything like that? I mean, you guys mentioned that one of your employees came to meet you in Toronto. Have you guys done like a company retreat or anything like that?
We haven't done a company retreat yet. Yeah. We were talking about sponsoring a couple of really cool yoga retreat companies kind of last year. And that's something we really wanted to do.
We were actually going to do that this year. Like that was our plan to do it in 2020, actually. Was there some like female founded companies that plan and host retreats? And we were actually going to take everyone on a retreat this year. But then COVID happened. So hopefully in the future. But actually Shane did go to the Philippines and he did get to meet our team there. And what we did was we flew our team members who were in different parts of the Philippines all to Cebu so that they could all be together. And Zach and Shane threw them a Christmas party.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
That was a good time. Actually, seeing people that you've been working with for years and then finally meeting them in person is such a powerful experience. Yeah. It was so much fun. It's one of those nights that just stands out, right? Like I still remember everything from that night, and it's been a year, and there's tons of nights that I have here in Toronto that are completely memoryless. But so I think it's an integral part.
Yeah,
of keeping a good team, right? Is to have those in-person meets.
That's awesome. Well, it seems you guys are building a great company culture. And I mean, that's kind of like in the DNA of the company with like the foundation and the idea of it. And then one thing I want to touch on now is like the sustainability aspect. You guys kind of brought it up a little bit, but it's a big part of your company, as I saw on the website and clearly how you guys operate. So I'd love you guys to kind of explain a little bit more about your sustainability efforts and how it's, again, not one of those trendy things to be cool with all the cool kids, It's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that the fact that sustainability is becoming something trendy and something cool, that's a really good thing. It's not a bad thing. And you see a lot of people giving companies hate for their sustainability aspects.
Bandwagon.
Yeah, but this bandwagon is a great thing.
Yeah.
So no matter how it gets across, and no matter how much, if people are putting more resources and more creativity into something like this, the means for people to do that, I think, is less important than the actual action of it.
Agreed.
But yeah, in terms of how that kind of started for Namastetics, I think you were asking about sourcing. Like, my parents did both flight attendants actually for Air Canada. So traveling for business is always something that I've been wanting to do. So the second I was working with somebody in China, I was like, I'm going to see them. I want to get to know these people. I want to see how they're doing everything, which isn't something a lot of people were doing starting dropshipping companies. But so I went and met Mark, who's our supplier there now. And I think being in China, I don't know, have you ever been to China, Josh?
Yes, I've been to Beijing and kind of like northern China, like near the Great Wall, but nothing.
Okay.
Around Beijing. But that was earlier last year. I went there for like a conference and I was doing a couple speaking gigs there. I did not have any cell phone service, so I was traveling blind, man. Like that's a whole other conversation. I was traveling on extra hard mode. So yes, I have been, and it's a very hard place to travel in when you don't have cell service.
Yeah. So if you've been to Beijing, you know how bad pollution can get there.
Oh yeah.
It's insane how noticeable it is right away. So that was something that stood out to me. Like the second I got to China was, everybody's talking about bring manufacturing jobs back to the US. And once I got there, I was like, I don't know if we want all these factories over here. Obviously it's just a pun because we all share the same air. But I think being over there is seeing what it can do to the world, what it can do to the environment in such an immediate state was pretty eye-opening. I think that was a pretty pivotal experience for me. Also, a trip I took to Bali, and seeing Bali has been a place that I've been wanting to go to for a long time. I went and stayed at a yoga retreat spot there, and just littered with garbage everywhere. The environment's terrible, and all the locals, like, it's not their priority there is to care about the environment, especially the environment of the world. So it was kind of those two things that brought it to our attention. In terms of what Namastetics is doing right now, so all of our garments are primarily cotton based. A lot of the ways that the fashion industry is harmful to the environment is from the microplastics that are washed away when fabric is laundered. So a lot of the fabrics that make up activewear, such as polyester, can be very harmful even after they're manufactured for those reasons. So cotton became one of the primary fabrics that we had used. A great book, if anybody's interested in sustainability and how companies put that at their forefront, is Let My People Go Surfing. I don't know if you've read that book by
Who's the author?
It's the founder of Patagonia. It's his autobiography.
I'll check that out.
And yeah, really great book. And he talks a lot about their sustainability efforts. They're obviously pioneers in the space.
Yes.
I think once people really start to get into the nitty gritty of like where we're at in the sustainability journey with fashion, we'll quickly realize how far away we are from what companies are claiming. I think the claims that companies making are farther ahead, make it seem like we're farther ahead than we are. And that's something that we've learned really quickly is just, even only being a few years into the journey of what we call turning kind of fast fashion into mindful fashion. There are so many things that need to get done that it can be a little bit daunting. But, just another caveat I'd put onto that is people, I think some of their first reaction towards seeing the carbon emissions and the environmental impact that the fashion industry has is just trying to shut the whole thing down. Yeah. Which is, like we were talking about before, clothing is a creative expression of who you are. It's something that we love. It's not something that should be turned off. Yeah. It's something that we need to figure out and pivot as quickly as possible. And Micha, you were going to.
Yeah. Just onto that note as well. It's very interesting because to Shane's point, where consumers look at it and they say, okay, well, where are your products made? Oh, I only want locally sourced. I only want this. And it's like, a lot of people say that, but they say it because it makes them feel good. They want to buy things from a market, and like they don't think about, the price increase. So people want it to be locally made, but they don't want to pay more for it. With us, something that we were always really proud of is it's not necessarily made in Canada, but sustainability has always been at the forefront of our minds. And so we've specifically partnered with people that were able to not only have sustainable products, have more mindful fashion, but also help other people around the world be entrepreneurs. So Mark, who is our primary supplier, when we had started working with him 4 years ago, he was an employee at a much bigger factory. And he was just pushing paper. And he had come from a family that worked in textiles and garments, female garments specifically. And so after about a year of working with him, he had asked us if we would be willing. He said he wanted to leave the factory and he wanted to open his own warehouse. And he asked if we would go with him. And at that time we had thought, well, like, you speak English and we understand each other and we have a relationship. Like, I guess we'll just do it. And we had just started producing our own goods. And so at that time, he was only making our bodysuits, like our one pieces. And another factory was actually making everything else for us, all of our bestsellers. And that was the factory that we had paid up front and had promised us all this product that never arrived. So we quickly, after Black Friday, made a pivot to give Mark our entire product line. And he ended up creating this warehouse, working with his family. So him and his fiance started their own business, started their own factory, which in China is incredibly hard to do, very hard to change your socioeconomic class. Employed his family, aunts, uncles, parents, cousins. And so now they have a family owned and operated business where we have seen their living conditions. We've actually seen the direct impact on their lives from getting to work with them. They were all living in this really tight 1-bedroom apartment. And when we went to go visit them last year in China, they had 2 apartments, living separate lives. They had their whole warehousing space that we got to visit that we are happy to say have like unbelievably beautiful work conditions. And we were able to do that. Yes, not in Canada, but why shouldn't you be able to help people around the world change their lives and give them opportunities? Like, we are so privileged to be North Americans. And I think, you take that privilege for granted very often, but if you can help people around the world to also level up, then the world itself is just going to come together even faster. And so something that our customers come to us with a lot is, well, these are made in China. And that's something that we always feel like we want to tell them the story is, yeah, it's made in China, but that doesn't mean that it's crap. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it hurt the environment. Actually, something that is really bad for fast fashion is, especially with like companies like Forever 21, while they were still in business, is they would see a trend and they would just mass produce. And then there was all of these garments left on the market, and then they would start selling things for $5 because now they had to get rid of it. And you're causing so much pollution, you're causing so much damage. What we do is we curate all of our products, and if something is a first-time purchase, we only use stock fabric for it. And we find these little hacks just to make sure that we're not causing any extra production or extra pollution into the world when we're creating our products. And then even when we do pick our materials, as Shane was saying, especially with our new core collection that we're going to be launching soon, one of our main focuses is organic cotton and making sure that we're sourcing products and sourcing fabrics that are going to be kind to the environment and something that our consumers will be proud to wear, but also still affordable. And so it's not going to break the bank of like what local fashion can sometimes do. And you're also helping another economy, which is only going to help lift the world up altogether. Something else that we've been focusing on is reducing our overall waste. So we keep everything from how our patterns are cut. Like if you think of a regular t-shirt, some of our shirts have really long strings on them. And that can be really wasteful because you're cutting out a really weird shape and then you're going to have this fabric that you can't do anything with it. So we actually work with a pattern maker who strategically cuts the pattern in different ways so that it's like, okay, this is going to be a strap on the side and this is a strap on the side. And then we're going to sew these pieces together as opposed to just cutting the shirt as it is so that we're not wasting extra fabric.
That is awesome. Huge juggling act. But when you guys get it right, it's like all the pieces come together. It's awesome. And we'll touch about something, but I think Shane, you definitely want to add something to that.
Yeah, well, I was going to add, like, it takes consumer demand to push the sustainability efforts forward, because at the beginning with these companies, attempting to innovate with packaging, with fabrics and stuff, the costs are going to be higher. So I think what's good to see is people willing to spend more to have these values hit for them. I think, that's a key piece of it, actually. So all of our packaging for our core collection is going to be 100% compostable. And in doing research and finding a partner that could supply that packaging for us, it's so cool to see like who is creating, the next level of packaging. Like there was a small startup in India that we found that was claiming that their packaging was compostable in like it was something like a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
After being exposed to specific items in the environment. So it was crazy. And so, these are new innovations that are happening. And I think the more we can fuel these startups and these young companies that are emphasizing that, the better.
And that they don't have to come from North America or your own backyard. But question for you guys, how did you find them? Like do you guys have like resources or like hubs? You have like forums or something? How do you guys find these people? Of course, you guys had that relationship with the guy who created your whole warehouse to create all your products. But when it comes to these packaging and all the other aspects of the supply chain, how do you guys find the suppliers?
Yeah, it's not as easy as finding like anybody that's going to make a plastic bag. That's for sure. But ultimately, we found them just Googling.
Yeah, it's a lot of research, and that's really all it is like, as an entrepreneur, Google's your best friend. every answer is out there. It might take hours to, sort through everything. Is this a legit company? Is what they're claiming real? And then you just start filling out customer contact forms, and then you start doing your research until you get to a point where it's like, all right, we'll take a risk. We'll get a sample and we'll go from here. Something else that we're sourcing is reusable bags, like almost like a grocery bag or like a packaging bag that we could use.
Oh, cool.
And we're using Alibaba for that. And so it's still a matter of, there's not one go-to place where you can source everything. You have to take the time and see what you can find. So the company that's actually going to be creating our poly bags and our mailer bags are North American based.
Oh, cool.
So not found in China. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of easy ways companies can start these efforts as well, though. It's what we've learned is it's not going to be an overnight evolution by any means, but there's a lot of small, easy things people can do. Like there's an organization called 1% for the Planet that you can donate 1% of gross revenue to. And they have a really strong organization that's, that has those values where that's a very small thing companies can do to start the right actions, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think like in the production, there's a lot of things that can be done. The only thing I don't see working until there's like electric vehicles is the whole shipping aspect of it, right? You guys mentioned that, yes, you're developing everything in China and it still has to be shipped one way or another to North America. So how do you guys deal with that?
That's a tough one, honestly. Like I think the direct to consumer e-commerce play definitely has an advantage because it's eliminating that step of shipping the clothing from a warehouse here to a retailer and then to the consumer. Mm-hmm. So, I think the shipping thing is going to be one of those ones that's the hardest to get around. Obviously, producing things locally would be the best option because you're eliminating that trip. For us, for our price margin, is just not an option. We've looked pretty actively for local manufacturers, cutters. We've been to factories in the US and in Canada. For us, it's still, we haven't found somebody that has the experience and the costs that are going to work for our products. But yeah, I don't know, Micha, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah. So on that note, something that is very important to us is being more of an inclusive brand. And that means having inclusive pricing. Yeah. And so something that's a really big barrier to starting a new activity like yoga is the cost that goes into it. So the cost of a membership, the cost of the clothing to feel comfortable. And so it is very important to us that we stay in more of an affordable price point. So our products range from $30 to $70, which comparison to our competitors that average a pair of leggings at $120, it's a big difference. And so for us, that's something that we're very mindful of. We could absolutely bring things to Canada and then bring our prices up to $120, $150, but then we would no longer be making yoga as accessible, which is one of our guiding missions. So something that we've played around with is like setting up shipping warehouses so that they are strategically placed close to the majority of our customers. So although we still ship products from China to the US, the majority of our customers are actually on the West Coast. So we've strategically picked our distribution warehouse to be located in Nevada so that when products are leaving our warehouse to go to our customers, they don't have as far to travel.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So like you create it in bulk and then they get shipped to the warehouse closest to where it's being sent off to other people.
The majority of the customers are.
And then you could do a few hubs like that and just kind of like, we can get into the automation of that, of how it logistically happens. I don't know if there's an app or something you guys use for that. I'm really interested to hear that.
So the warehouse actually creates a platform that will integrate directly with your Shopify store.
So we use a third-party logistics center that already has like 27 locations. That are available to us to use based on where our customers are ordering.
That's awesome. What's the company called?
So that helps. It's called Rakuten Super Logistics.
Cool. So I'm sure there's a lot of those. Yeah.
There's a ton. Rakuten Super Logistics has been pretty reliable for us for the most part, though. We've been using them since the beginning.
That's cool. And that's 3PL, right? What people have been calling third-party logistics.
3PL.
Just repeat. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll have a shit ton of show notes in here. No, I think that's awesome. I think it's just the last mile shipping. And I think there's a lot of people in e-commerce and just in shipping in general that have been saying, if you can nail last mile shipping, like that's going to be where all the innovation comes from. Because I mean, Tesla, when they start putting out their semi truck, their fully electric semi truck, that will have a huge impact. That will help a lot.
Totally. Yeah. And like I said, it's just like that journey that we're just getting into. There's so much that could be improved.
There's a lot of room for innovation.
Yeah.
Do you guys, I mean, aside from just creating the products, do you guys have any desire to like stick your hand in that pot of that innovation?
Well, I think the interesting thing is the more you get into it,
yes.
The more you get into it, the more you realize your own lifestyle and the little nuances of where you're wasteful and things like that. So yeah, I totally think so.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're experimenting with is kind of on the roadmap for 2021 that we've seen other companies doing is having manufacturing centers in the US that repurpose fabrics back into your garments so you can remake the garments with existing fabrics that are broken down again.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so we've been looking into a couple centers that do that, so that we can introduce some sort of reuse recycle program, which I think is a good thing for a business too, because if you're giving a customer like 50% off their next purchase to send your item back to them, where most customers are throwing out garbage, it's something like 85% of clothing that's manufactured ends up in landfills and isn't recycled properly. So just that is a huge thing of just recycle clothing properly eliminates a huge problem in a sense. So I think, little innovations doing that, kind of like trying to lead the charge with new things. There's a company called Girlfriend Collective, which I'll plug, even though there are competitors that are doing a good job with their reuse recycle programs. Something like that could be cool.
That's cool. Yeah. That's awesome, guys. So I have a few, couple little talking points while I have you guys here together in the same room. There's quite a bit here, so I don't know how much we'll actually get to, but maybe we can just kind of touch on, because we've been bringing this up a couple times because we're getting to this time of year of Black Friday and holiday sales. So this is like the biggest retailer like bonanza, right? Coming up in the next like month. You guys said like in the weekend you do like a month and a half or 2 months.
Like a quarter. We do a quarter of our year.
That's
you
crazy.
See the gray in my beard? That's from Black Friday. It's the craziest time of year.
I guess that's how Santa has his big white beard, right?
Yeah, it's from Black Friday.
It's not even from Christmas. It's Black Friday. So what goes into planning a Black Friday sale?
We've made a lot of mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes with Black Friday, Cyber Monday. A lot of different mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want you to hit me with like the top 3 to 5, like big ones that people can.
One of the early mistakes we made was not buying enough inventory. We did not realize how much of a spike Black Friday, Cyber Monday is. Mm-hmm. Now we can see the sales graphs and where the spikes are, but we ran out of inventory so fast within Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
And then the following year, we bought way too much. Like we're still carrying inventory from it.
Yeah. So
God.
Inventory management is definitely one of the challenges for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. But the ultimate lesson we learned is it's way better to sell out than it is to buy too much. So that took a couple of years to figure that out. Yeah. But that was one of the lessons we learned. A lot of the lessons are pretty self-explanatory, like plan ahead, have everything done in advance, not just so that you're done early, but that's so when somebody does something else interesting in your industry, you have the time and energy to pivot and do that thing. Yeah. Every year, some other big brand is going to come out with some email idea or some campaign idea that they shot that if you had planned ahead and put all your emails in line, your campaigns, now you have the time to go and execute that. Like we did an ad, I think it was like the week before Black Friday, where Micha had on our overalls and she's like, this Black Friday, we're dropping everything, and then dropped down her overalls. And and that was like our best performing ad.
Yeah. And we were out to lunch and we were just like, hey, let's film an ad. And we were leaving the restaurant and it was like under the overpass, right?
Yeah.
And we just filmed it and then that was it.
So I think, giving yourself time to be able to think about ideas on the spot and actually execute them and not be cramming last minute as much as possible. I would say that was just a big piece of advice. Plan way further ahead than you think you need to. Have you ever heard that expression with camping? Like get 5 times as much firewood as you think you're going to need for the night, and then keep getting more. Oh,
I love that. Never heard that.
That was something I learned in Scouts, but I think that applies here.
It definitely does. 100%. I love those little life lessons, they tell you in Scouts, like, these are going to be life lessons you're going to need to know. You're like, why am I ever going to need to know this? You can start a business. You're like, what? Yeah, I definitely needed to know that. I love when those little connections happen. So when it comes to the marketing now, where are you guys kind of focusing your efforts this year on Black Friday?
Well, Facebook and Instagram has been a primary driver of traffic and revenue for us since the beginning. And I continue to believe that it's still going to be an arbitrage of attention on Facebook and Instagram. Still drives a lot of demand for our brand. But Facebook and Instagram is extremely volatile. Like right now, they made some changes to their compatibility with iOS. So tracking is being kind of thrown for a loop. They're constantly making updates to their algorithms. And we're undergoing one right now. So I think it's important to, although capitalize on what's working in terms of marketing channel, you want to be a pretty stable bar stool. You don't want to have one big leg. So I think it's super important to always be having a certain aspect, percentage of your budget allocated to experimenting with other marketing channels.
So on that note as well, not just experimenting with other marketing channels, which is also super important. Like you always want to know what is the next best thing. Like TikTok came out. Now TikTok might be dead as of November 12th. And if it dies, what's the next thing? And so it's also figuring out what are the channels that are always reliable, like your old faithfuls, and then just planning for those as well. So a big one for us is actually email marketing. And so just pre-planning our emails for the month of November and for Black Friday, Cyber Weekend in general, knowing that those are going to be going out and they're going to be revenue driving as well. So those are going to give us that cushion. Same thing with SMS campaigns.
Oh, interesting.
It's just knowing that those work and pre-planning those as well, having the designs done, having them scheduled, and then they're ready to go.
That's awesome. So what do you guys use for email marketing right now?
So the platform we use is Klaviyo. We use Klaviyo for email marketing, and we use Attentive for our SMS text message marketing. And as far as planning that out, I would say one of the other lessons we've learned, and that's super important for Black Friday, is buying your traffic early. Buying it in October when those CPMs are lower, in September, when people are just kind of scouting out their Christmas gifts, when it's a little bit cheaper. And then once you've bought those people, they've been to your site, you've collected their email and text and their phone number. Then when it comes down to Black Friday, you can reach those people without having to pay that added acquisition cost.
Oh, that's so smart.
Dealing with. Yeah. So I think going heavy into lead gen this month in October is a great way to plan ahead and make sure your costs are lower and you can focus on retargeting on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. I think right now we're buying traffic on TikTok. We've only been doing that for the past month, and we've seen some really cool results with it. Anytime there's a new platform, there's like a lot of changes going on with it. But I've seen some promise with TikTok. I think there's a big arbitrage on YouTube right now as well. We run traffic on Pinterest. We've been doing that for a little bit. CPMs are really cheap, so you can get a good kind of like cost per click on your warm traffic.
Do they work well for you guys on Pinterest? Are you actually getting sales from those?
We are. I think part of the challenge is figuring out the differences and advantages to all these platforms and how do they work together in an overall funnel strategy.
Right.
Like Pinterest, the cost per click is very cheap. The CPMs are cheap, much cheaper than Facebook and Instagram. But it's tough to get kind of those convince new customers to buy from you. And, I've been trying to figure out what the reason is, if it's just something inherent about the platform that, you're just skipping over a lot of things at once, where it just seems to work really well for that bottom of the funnel kind of retargeting stage. Yeah. But if you pair that well with Facebook's, that top of the funnel traffic you're getting, then, overall using those those channels together could be a strategy that works out.
To that note, it's really important to think about like, why are people on that platform and what's the point of it? So typically when people are going to Pinterest, they're planning weddings or they're planning dates or they're in that early stage of, I'm going to put my mood board together of all of my ideas. And so they're not really in a place to buy yet. They're looking at it as though like, I want to look at everything and then I'll decide what I want to buy. So they're not even hot leads. They're not warm leads. They're very early on. But even acknowledging that and being on their mood board and then getting them as a lead and then hitting them with an email during Black Friday when they have their credit cards out is an ideal strategy. But with every new platform that's coming out, the biggest thing to ask is like, how are people using it? What is the purpose of it at that time? And then how does that fit into the different buying stages that a consumer goes through?
That's interesting because you can go for discovery and just be like, hey, we exist here. Look, just like put it in front of them. Or it's like you can actually use it strategically. And like, what is their intention when they opened up the app? What are they going to do? What is that action they'll be doing? So that's really interesting. And that's sort of for the paid side of things, right? For paid social media marketing. What about for organic? Like, have you guys just built a really good following just from the aesthetic of Namastetics? Is it, social, social media influencers? What has worked really well for you guys on that side of thing?
Actually, I think the way we approached it, my interest really early on was in the paid media side of it. So that made up a big part of our marketing strategy. And influencer marketing, I feel like most clothing companies start with influencer marketing. Mm-hmm. It's something that we're still tapping into with Namastetics. It's just over the past couple months, we've taken influencer marketing more seriously than we've ever had. So that I would say that we're not the experts on influencer marketing. It's definitely more on the paid traffic side. It's something that we're still playing around with and getting, but
we actually just transferred when we hired a new social media coordinator. We just transferred our social media manager over to be our influencer and partnerships manager. So that's still something that we're still figuring it out, how we want to work with influencers, knowing that we do want to work with influencers in some capacity. They're great for producing content in like that, like fast content realm that we live in where trends are always changing, but we're still figuring out what that looks like.
Right.
But I would say that also from being hit by ads throughout the year, naturally our customers start to follow us. They start to love our products and then they fall in love, and we get a lot of comments, and we do engage in comments organically, and people start asking like, I love these pants. When are they going to go on sale? So our conversations for customer service in the next few weeks are going to be leading up to getting people ready to expect something really big for Black Friday and the holiday season. And, we want to be known as a brand that doesn't often go on sale. However, that is a really great time to buy. So it's also making sure that from an organic perspective, we're still engaging with all of those comments on our Facebook and Instagram photos.
I think organic is super important, making sure your feed and your socials are socially or aesthetically pleasing and that they follow your brand essence is important. But if you believe in the brand, if you believe in the product and the process, you should be confident in spending money to get a customer.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Because at the end of the day, like, you're going to have to do that. Yeah. I think influencer marketing is super important. A lot of companies have grown bigger than us, quicker than us, doing mainly influencer marketing. It's something we're putting effort into. But my number one advice to anybody who's always starting a business is don't be afraid to spend money to get a customer. Yeah. Figure out the funnel now. And
obviously figure out the economics, because if it works, like I think it was like Sam Ovens from consulting.com who started that company. Yeah. He talked about, he's one of the kings of Facebook ads. Like, this guy has made like tens of millions of dollars on Facebook ads. And he just kept saying, like, I don't know of any other machine where you put $1 in and $2 comes out. And take those $2, put it back in, and you get like $5 out. So it works. And that's kind of, it's also kind of like casino. Like, anyone who buys paid media says it's kind of like casino too. Do you have any thoughts on that, Shane?
It is. I used to think that it was, but I think it all comes down to the attitude you take when you're in Ads Manager. A lot of people do look at it as a casino, and most of those people don't end up doing that well with Facebook ads. I think the people that do well are the people that look at it in a holistic view. Of like, here's the entire funnel. Here's the touch points they're getting at these specific times. Here's where they're at the buying process. Here's the copy I think will work. Separating out the funnel, using proper audience segmentation. Those are the things that make you win at Facebook ads. You're going to get quick hits like a casino, and it is addicting. Misha's sitting there like, Shane's addicted. He's got a gambling problem.
On Black Fridays, and like usually throughout the year, I'm the one being like, how much should we spend? But what was the return? But what was the ROAS? And Shane's just like, it's doing well now.
Yeah. So, I think it can appear that way. But I think the worst thing to do is to treat it as if it is a casino. I think the best media buyers are the people that look at it from a marketing perspective.
For sure. Absolutely. And you're looking at the data behind it, right? That's all it really is. Like you said, you get the quick hits or whatever, but you want to know what's actually going to work. Obviously, there's going to be times when you're first started, like, I don't really know if this is going to work or not. That might be like a casino-like mindset. But I think once you figure out what works, you're totally right. It's purely a marketing play at that point.
No, I think it's an exciting field in a way too, because programmatic media buying at this level is something that's so new to us.
So new.
So you're almost figuring out a career that's just started. No one's ever done this the way that we have. So I think that part of it is exciting. And when you figure it out, it's now a catalyst for you to be able to apply those same strategies you've just learned with whatever business you're in to whatever business you want to start.
And you did that with another business. Do you want to talk about Nomadic?
Yeah, we've started a lot of different e-commerce and, about foreplay and different things, that I think ad buying was one of the things, like learning that process of how to acquire a customer profitably. Once you figure that out, you can do it with any product, with any business. So this past like year and a bit, I think I took that too far.
Like really focused in on that, like just laser focused on it.
No, like too far in the opposite way of taking on too much at one time.
Oh, yeah. Because you guys were doing, obviously Namastetics, and then you started doing nomadic fabrics. And then with Foreplay, you guys had multiple projects around that, right?
Yeah. And I also had another business called Carte Blanche that I started, which was a jewelry e-commerce business, which is still going to this day on a lower scale, but was a 7-figure business. At the same time, Nomadic was, Namastetics was, and Foreplay was up and going with multiple different clients. So there's a big... there's a tempting treat with e-commerce that there is no barrier to entry.
Shiny object syndrome.
There's no barrier to entry. So you can start anything in any type of industry with any type of product really easily. And for people like me who are interested in a lot of different things and want to experiment, ambitious, and want to do a lot of things, that's the tempting thing to avoid, in my opinion.
Right. So it's almost like you have to just stay away from that. Almost, you have to just like not be tempted by the shiny object and just focus on that thing, just keep it going. Is that kind of what you've learned, like to not try to take on so much?
I think it definitely is. It's one of the harder lessons that I've had to learn over this year, is that when something's so easy, it is so easy to start it. You forget about how much time it actually takes, and what the sacrifices actually are involved with doing so many different things. You forget you're starting a real company when you're starting a direct to consumer business. Like, yeah, you're going to, filing taxes for a corporation isn't as easy as you think it will be. And when you have to do 5 in 1 year for the first time, not always the best idea.
Yeah. I mean, of course you want to try to outsource that, get a good accountant, but there's still parts like, hey, we need this from you. You need to go check on that. Do you have all the receipts for this? You're like, fuck, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. And, like, let's say for Namastetics, for instance, there's somebody out there who's only building their, let's say, yoga wear, loungewear, clothing company, and that's all they're doing. It's all they care about. And they're devoting every second of their day to figuring out how to do it better than you. And if I'm doing this and 5 other things, the chances of that person beating me are pretty hard. Mm-hmm. It's not just about the hours put in. It's about the hours in the shower, in bed, where the problems are going around in your head and you're thinking about them and solving them and having epiphanies. Where if you have 5 different businesses in their own niche, different products, different problems, different solutions, I think your mental space can get clouded.
But is there room for making those connections? Like maybe a problem from one of your Foreplay. And by the way, for anyone listening, just a little precursor, Foreplay is the name of their agency. Just to
good
clear
preface.
Things up. If like maybe one of your clients at Foreplay or maybe Nomadic has a problem, like, hey, that worked. Like, have you ever tried to bring that back into Namastetics?
Yeah, I think because I'm at the tail end of taking on too much at one time, that anytime somebody would ask me about starting multiple projects, my advice would over-index on the side of no, focus on one thing. But ultimately, this, the past year of starting a ton of businesses has definitely given me a wider perspective and taught me things that I wouldn't have known before. And I think Foreplay is a great catalyst for that. I wouldn't change anything. But I would say it's a balance. It's a continuum to always be on, of making sure that you're always trying new things, taking on new experiences in spaces you don't understand, but also making sure that you're giving the right amount of headspace to the things you're doing. Because, if you're trying to build 5 businesses or one business, I feel like the best strategy is build one business really quickly and then go to the next one and try to build those same 5 businesses in the same amount of time, but just do one at a time.
Right, instead of all at the same time. Okay, you chunk it off like a couple months with this one or a year with this one. Okay, that's working. I can hire people to fill those positions. I don't need to spend that time. Automate yourself out of the business, then go to the next one, start it back up again, take learnings from the last one, and go like one at a time sequentially instead of trying to do it all at once, is basically what you're saying.
Absolutely, because there's tons of people in business and entrepreneurs that have multiple different businesses that are all wildly successful.
Right.
So I think it definitely is possible, but I would say, to anybody early starting business, it's way easier to start just one.
Definitely.
I would even say, like, at the early stages of a business, that's when it's most important for the founder to be fully focused and fully bought in, because the minute that you start automating and you add in extra people, the culture quickly changes. And then if you're stepping out to focus on another business, the previous business can mesh into something else. So we always had a bit of a balance where when we first started Namastetics, I was working full time with other startups. I was an employee and then working with Namastetics morning, lunch throughout the day when no one was looking, and then into the evenings and on the weekends. And then when Shane started Carte Blanche and then he started Nomadic with Zach, it was actually March 22nd of 2019 that I left the job where I was a full-time employee to fully focus on Namastetics. And so we almost tag teamed out. And so although Shane was always still involved in Namastetics in the business, as he was picking up more like other jobs or like other projects, I even noticed that he was less involved, but it was also okay because I was there and we just had good communication between ourselves to make sure that the vision was still following away. But it was also challenging to see when there's so many different things going on and it's like, okay, I need you for this. And like even scheduling time in his calendar gets difficult. But as the company starts to grow, it gets to an easier place to add in really great employees and to know that, okay, we've hired this layer of managers that is then going to hire below them and they're going to continue on our really great culture. But especially in the first few years, it's really important that any business you open, whether it's a franchise, whether it's an e-com store, anything, the owners and the founders really have to be involved in the business. And customers love to see that as well. Like they want to feel like they know the people who are starting the business and that they have a connection with you also.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's almost like everyone says like starting a business, like, raising a child, right? You got to be there in its early days because that's how it's going to form. It's culture, obviously, but also its personality as the brand. If you're not there and other people are running the social media and stuff, like you kind of need to be there to make sure that it's kind of molded in a certain way. So I definitely agree. So are you done with everything else then, Shane, right now? Are you going back purely to Namastetics, or what is your plan now that you've learned that lesson?
Well, I've now kind of brought my my focus portfolio from 5 to 2. So that is not an easy transition, but it's one that has freed up a lot of headspace for me. I think people always think they can work harder until you're literally maxed out all the time. And I was always willing to make those sacrifices with everything else. I think anybody that won't listen to that advice and wants to start multiple things, which I wouldn't listen. I would still do that if I was me 2 years ago. Just, they need to be aware of what sacrifices they have to make. Like I don't have weekends like normal people. And if I do, it's because it's an emergency, right? Like I don't see my friends all the time. I don't have normal Sundays watching football. If I do, it means I'm falling behind on a lot of things and I'm going to have a shitty week next week. So I think people need to understand like what sacrifices are involved. They need to be realistic about what they can outsource and automate early on and what they can't, and realize what sacrifices they're forcing other people to make by them doing that, including business partners if they have business partners in these businesses that they're in. What now that you're starting something else, although you're bringing learning experiences over, what are you putting on them? That they're now forced to pick up. So, I don't think...
So it's easy to say that I do our taxes.
Safe to say, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, Foreplay has always been a catalyst for, a lot of learning that we've had. And I'm super passionate about Foreplay, both Foreplay and Namastetics. And they're going to continue to be, the things that I put my time and energy into. But I now realize, and I'm realistic about what that sacrifice means. Starting one company is hard enough. Starting 2 companies means you do nothing else.
And then trying to do 5 is just impossible unless you're not really doing anything in those businesses.
Or if you have realistic goals for each of those things. If not all 5 of these are I'm going to be able to maintain as 7-figure businesses with only a couple employees. Mm-hmm. Some things can be side projects, but they have to remain that.
That's true. That's true. Because I've been feeling that even with this podcast, but like we've been on here for an hour and a half. So I'm really grateful you guys have, given me the time to be on this. Because I think everything we've been talking about is just so... It's this wisdom that I would never be able to get. And even if I were just to do this podcast myself, I don't have the experiences you guys have to share with other people listening and for myself to listen to, because I'm kind of getting into this stage as well. And for the podcast, even, it's like, same thing like you're saying, like, holy shit, I don't have an evening like other people. Thank God that you guys are not normal people like me and you're okay to do this. But that's then there's time, holy shit, you got to edit a fucking hour and a half podcast, man. Then you have to like do all the marketing. Like it's a project in itself, right? But if it fuels you in a way that like it's giving you more than just money or whatever creative energy is, creative juices, it becomes worth it in a way, right? So I guess you just have to find what those things are that's actually worth it to you. Like, hey, is it worth the sacrifice? More than just money, because like businesses, yes, will give you some sort of money. Sometimes they won't even. Like, you have to just love the process. So it's pretty interesting. So does that mean you guys are done with Nomadic Fabrics? Are you guys still trying to sell the business? I think Zach had mentioned.
Yeah, we're just in the process of, properly doing an exit. We, Zach and I have definitely put that on the back burner in terms of not putting any of our energy towards it. It's been, pretty stagnant. We've had ads off for a long time now. So it hasn't been a focus of ours of growing that business, more so on just cleaning things up and closing it up. But each of the businesses, including Nomadic Fabrics, we learned a ton of lessons in. I think it's, that cliche advice that entrepreneurs give of like learn a lot and fail a lot quickly. You definitely do that when you start a lot of different projects at one time. You put yourself through a lot of stress, but you learn really quickly as long as you can manage it.
Yeah, that's true. Did you have other side projects, Micha? Do you have other businesses on the side as well?
So I always played around with starting other businesses, and I had a few Shopify stores that I feel like I had great ideas for, and like a couple that I still pay for a subscription I sit on. Yeah, but right.
Same. But so many domain names. God, yeah.
I know, so many. I actually got like 3 emails today from one Ionis saying that like I had emails or I had domains up for renewal.
And you're like, fuck, this is the third one
like,
this month.
What do I do?
Like, I might still do something with this. I don't know.
But for me, it was always like, I just wanted to be hyper focused on Namastetics because I always believed in the vision and I like truly believe in what it could be. And especially since we had tag teamed and Shane stepped out, I really wanted to make sure that like one of us was guiding the ship. And because I do see myself as the end consumer and I feel like I really connect with the brand, it's always been my main focus. What I have done instead is I've helped a lot of friends actually start their own businesses. So most of my friends actually have like my Calendly link and will book regular calls with me and be like, okay, this is where I'm at. And so I've taken on more of like a mentor role to a lot of women in my community and awesome. A couple of guys, and have instead focused my time in helping them build their businesses, usually without a fee, which is like the common thing of selling yourself short. But always also just happy to know that I'm helping other people to like get out of the rut that they're stuck in to start their own thing. I'm also going to be entering like a totally different life stage right around Black Friday as well. So that'll probably take up a little bit of time.
Details.
Yeah. So I'm actually expecting a little babe on December 11th. So I actually made a joke to Shane over the weekend that I really hope the baby doesn't come early on Black Friday.
Oh,
yeah.
I kind of hope he does, because then he or she is destined for e-commerce.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a Nama baby right there.
A Nama baby. And then you'll do a baby line, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, first we got to get into maternity and then like mom and babe line, a little. Yeah.
It makes total sense.
Mom and baby yoga.
It works.
After we take
baby
on the
yoga.
wiener dog.
Yeah.
The wiener dog niche is our next target.
No, we're owning the wiener dog niche, man. I'll send you guys it. I gotta send you guys some of the stuff.
I'd love to see it. What stage are you guys at this point?
So we're just finishing up. Well, we have all the products. It's all automated because we're using print on demand. So we could take orders right away. We're just finishing up all the description, copy, homepage, making sure all that's ready. We're gonna open it like a soft launch, get friends and family to buy stuff, make sure that it all works, and then we'll start launching, as you guys mentioned, with influencer marketing. So the whole reason why I started was Marissa got obsessed with not only our wiener dog, Tino. She made an Instagram account for him, but she found out that like a lot of people are, and it's like one of those cult breeds. It really is. There's like 2 or 3 cult breeds, and wiener dog's definitely one of them. So she just made this huge community of wiener dog owners and lovers. And then she just asked them, like early on the stage when I first designed the clothing, like, hey, would you guys wear that? Like, hell yeah. Like, hey, we'll send you a few shirts. Just put it on Instagram, just post it and then see if any of your followers would also want it. Send them the link. We'll give you a discount code. And that's, I think, how we're going to start. Just keep it super grassroots organic, and then maybe run ads. Because now, I'm just starting to learn Facebook ads. So it's figuring out now, how do we start almost, I don't want to say stealing those followers, but, you can target people who follow certain accounts. It's like, well, here are the 3 to 5 biggest ones. They're probably going to be interested in some capacity. So maybe we'll start with that.
You know, Josh, there's a great agency that I could actually refer you to that could probably help you with your Facebook ads.
Are they foreplay?
She means us.
Are they? That's exactly what I'm getting at. Are they a foreplay?
Foreplay.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great idea.
Do it because it fits the foreplay brand, dude. Like you could have so many dick jokes.
Foreplay long boy. Oh my god.
Oh my god,
dude, the possibilities.
Dude, and we're gonna launch a champion brand. So let's do foreplay X long boy X champion.
Can I just say one of the domains that I registered was She Comes First.
Oh, I love that.
But it was like a self-love line. It was like right?
Yeah. Yeah. But this is good. Like, I mean, I love the whole reason why I'm loving this is like we get to have so much fun with it, just like you guys are with foreplay, right? It's like one of those things that just fuels everything. Because like I just designed a shirt the other day. It's called the Red Rocket. And if anyone who has a dog, do you guys have a dog?
Yeah.
Do you have a male dog?
We know the Red Rocket.
Yeah. So it's just a lipstick with just a lipstick thing with just like the edge of the lipstick kind of pulled out. So it just looks like the Red Rocket. And it's just so random. People who get it will get it, you know, and I don't really care about the people who don't, the people who find it funny, like those are the type of people. So I've learned in the last like year or two too, like you can't cater to everyone, right? You can't have everyone love you. So it's like have these people specifically like you. And if everyone else hates you, great. I love that too.
That is such a good point. And that's something that at the very beginning of the business, we felt like we wanted everyone to love Namastetics. And then we had people like hating on our best-selling pieces, like the Wander Pant. And it's just like, now we just trip them back and we're like, yeah, it's not for everyone. Good thing we sell basic leggings for basic people. But it's true. It's like the people who love your style, they'll get it. And those are your people. And not everyone's going to be a fan. Not everyone's going to be a customer. And that is okay.
Totally. That's exactly it. It's like finding the niche, catering those people. And if it grows, right? Like I think it was like the last one that I seen that just went huge was Gymshark, right? Like those guys are on a whole other level. They just like became like $1 billion company. It's insane.
Shane's about to start fuming right now.
Fuck Gymshark.
God damn, I can't believe you brought them up. We're breaking out.
I was waiting.
Our Wi-Fi connection's going down.
I know. I was waiting. I'm like, when do I break out the name? I had a feeling.
Yeah, no, Gymshark, I do mad respect for the way that they've done things. And they're like the darling of direct to consumer, right?
I know.
And just another case study of how powerful influencer marketing can be. Now that we're getting more into influencer marketing, like it is a really great space because you get to connect with people that you wouldn't normally get to connect with. And Gymshark's a great example of that, right? Like their community of ambassadors that they build and the impact that has on everybody that buys their clothes. Like it really becomes like a cultural transforming company when you do influencer marketing really, really well. And I feel like that could work really well for these wiener dog people. I don't know how crazy they're going to be or what kind of people these wiener dog people are.
Dude, they're insane. There's fucking Toronto meetups. You go on a Sunday, the first Sunday of every month, and you'll be just like bombarded by like 30 wiener dogs. So for our Facebook ads, I'm hoping it lines up for Black Friday.
It's a bukkake of wieners. A bukkake of wiener dogs.
That's exactly it. I'm going to have a video of me just getting tackled by 30 wiener dogs wearing a long boy shirt. That's everyone's dream who loves the breed. It's too funny. Oh my God.
They're great. They're so comical. They're long with the little short legs.
Yeah. We have a shirt. Little legs, big energy. Like that perfectly describes them.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite design that you come up with out of the 80 so far?
Oh, fuck. It honestly might be the classics. I told you before. I really like Roots and Puma. So just that classic, just our logo, like the dog and just long boy. I'm like, this looks like a classic shirt to me. I'm like, this looks like something that came before I was born, and that's what I was trying to achieve. And I think I got it. Like I have actually like maybe Facebook Messenger conversations with Zach where I was sending him designs, like him being the designer, obviously. He's a fantastic designer. So I was sending these designs for his feedback, and I had like 30 or 40 that I sent him, and they look nothing like what I actually landed on. And what I landed on is like, that's what I've been looking for. And it just took some searching, and it's classic. It's perfect. I'm so happy with it. So I'm almost happiest with just the classic OG. We're calling it the OG, just the logo and the type. Super simple.
Yeah. Well, we're first on the list to buy it, buddy.
Yes, do it. And then honestly, when you guys are starting to roll out more of the yoga studios, let me know, because my mom has like 3 or 4 hubs in Durham.
Oh, no way.
So to be able to, So she'll be able to definitely help you guys launch out there.
Yeah,
Is she looking to be an influencer?
She would 100%. Well, she does like during COVID, she was doing like Facebook Live yoga classes and stuff. So it would have been great for her to be wearing that, and then she can plug it.
Amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll deck her out in Nama gear.
Yeah,
be happy.
Awesome.
Marissa too.
Oh, Marissa will love it. Now she started. Well, I don't want to say she's more of like the Lululemon style, but I know she at heart is the boho style. So I think she didn't know it existed. I feel like when you think of yoga clothing, right, you think of the Lululemon, and then like, we've been doing the Peloton at home classes. Yeah. So you're thinking like you're seeing the way that they're dressed, but then there's that boho yogi style of like almost like the classic yogi.
Yeah. So like yoga wear, something that we always talk about as well, and we did a couple of lives on this with some of our ambassadors, is like it's become very North Americanized, where people think that leggings are traditional to yoga, but really it is the genie pants and it's the oversized harem pants. So it's coming back to that. And something that I always found very interesting and that inspires some of our styles too, was that the yoga instructors at my studio never bought leggings true to size. They always bought their leggings 3 to 4 sizes bigger, because what they wanted was a fitted jogger. And they just didn't know where to find a fitted jogger that was good to sweat in a hot yoga class.
It's a great way to discover that, right? And figure out that's what people actually wanted. That's so cool. Awesome, guys. Well, let's wrap up soon because I don't want to keep you too much longer. So last couple things is if you guys, just pretty general, if you guys have any tools, resources, or tips for new business owners, again, just kind of, you can just say to me, what tips and resources do you guys have for me starting Longboy? And maybe it's a different type of apparel, but especially coming into like Black Friday, the holiday, and just getting started. Like, what would you be your biggest tips for me? And I'll send this to Marissa. Marissa can listen to the podcast and she can get the tips.
I mean, my first thing would be don't major in minor things. I don't think you're the type of guy to do that, but I think a lot of people do. They spend a lot of time on things that don't have a huge impact on their business. So I think constantly reevaluating the time that you're spending on things, and is this the best thing that I should be focusing on? I think is a good general piece of advice. Something more specifically, especially to clothing, but I think to all products, is make something unique. I mean, one thing I've learned in starting businesses in home decor, jewelry, and activewear, which a lot of people could argue are 3 of the most saturated consumer goods industries, is it's not saturated if you're selling something unique. It's only saturated if you're selling the same shit everybody else is selling. And I think like a lot of friends that have come to me trying to start clothing brands, they try to sell the same thing everybody else is selling. It's nobody's going to come to you for that.
So what would be an example of that? Like what you've seen friends create clothing brands out of?
Well, I think like they try to start, another gym brand that's, a bad ripoff of Gymshark, or just another muscle tee that has nothing unique to it about it in terms of like the figure of it. It's just that same kind of shape, and they've, pasted their logo onto it. And there's nothing really unique or eye-catching about their logo. They think, just because they're doing something that it's going to be successful. I think, it really takes the effort to put something in that someone can't find somewhere else, because ultimately people can buy clothing from thousands of places. So you have to create something that once they see that you have it, they can't go anywhere else to get it. And another good example would be like our Wander pant. There's been a lot of ripoffs of it since, but a pant that was cut open from like almost the hip down to the ankle, where it's like, rather than having pants closed up, let's open them right up, and they're going to be completely different. And that's really what launched Namastetics. That was our catalyst of something that was new, unique, and different that we couldn't find somewhere else.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
From the friends that I typically mentor to, a huge thing that I see, to Shane's point, is that people will have a brand that they love so much and they just want to emulate it, but they don't have any unique ideas. They just want to own an e-commerce store, and they just want to do exactly what Billabong is doing or what someone else is doing. It's like, then why wouldn't they just go to the known established brand? So if people are already going to risk buying from a website that they may not have heard of before, that's a new business that Shopify says started in 2020, then you better be offering something that is worth the risk. And I say that in air quotes, the potential risk to the consumer of buying from a brand that they don't trust, is it has to be unique enough, but then also you have to make sure that you have your customer service figured out. Because if people can clearly see, hey, this is how I can return it, this is going to put me at ease. I'm now going to take that quote unquote risk to buy because I know that if it's awful, well, I can buy with PayPal and I have PayPal protection, or you offer refunds within this time frame. Just having a clear and laid out returns and exchanges strategy, as well as great customer service process setup, is going to give you that brand trust and loyalty eventually that customers are going to want. Once customers come to you and they know from the first time that they had an easy exchange, they're more likely to be a repeat customer. And just figuring out what your customer service plan is going to be and laying it out very clearly for your customers is also going to make the holiday season much more seamless for you.
Oh, that is awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for that. Those are both honestly amazing tips, because that's exactly it. There's risk, right? It's not going on Amazon. It's not like, you can just message Amazon, they'll give you your money back. And I think that's the thing. Like, a lot of new e-commerce people are kind of going towards FBA, right? The fulfillment by Amazon, so they can kind of pawn that risk on Amazon. But when you have your own brand and you're really doing your own thing, your website, your Shopify site is really your store, right? It's the storefront. Yeah. Like, there's risk it's like going to a new city and then going to some random store there. And then you don't know if you're going to get your thing. It's like, I'll give you money and I might get it in like a couple weeks. And then, you guys said you ran out of stock. So if that happens, luckily, again, because we're doing print on demand, there's rerouting features where here's 30 different suppliers. If this one doesn't have it, it'll automatically route to them. But if you guys are doing your own thing and something actually does run out, if people want to get a return, do you just say, hey, you will get it, we'll track it for you, or hey, just here's your refund, you can repurchase it after? So
what we actually do is we're very upfront with our customers and we'll email them before they contact us. Oh. So if it's created a back order and we've recognized that we've oversold or the stock didn't arrive, there was an error on the website and it oversold, something happened, our CS team within 24 hours will email them, letting them know, hey, this happened. These are your options. We can either wait and this is when it's going to be refilled, if it will be refilled, they'll give them an in-stock date, or they'll say, this is not going to be refilled. Do you want me to offer you a gift card? Do you want me to offer you, the very last option is always a refund, but we still do put that in there because obviously it's our own technical error. But we offer them so many things. And then we'll even say, hey, if you just want to take a gift card, we'll actually give you a gift card plus $20 on top of the value of whatever that item was for. And then you can use that towards your next purchase.
Another piece of advice would be, if you're using Klaviyo's ESP, set up email automation sequences for if orders are unfulfilled after a certain amount of days, where customers get, let's say, there's an order that hasn't been fulfilled. It's been 3 days. Send out an automated email of, hey, we're working on it. Because, I think a lot of people, when they're taking a long time to do things, they try to stay out of their customer's way and not so the customer doesn't think about them or remind them that they ordered. But ultimately, customers will be more okay with it than you think if you communicate with them a lot up front. And you can automate that easily with an ESP like Klaviyo.
That's awesome.
Actually, when we were drop shipping, that's something we were super upfront about. We just said, we're shipping from multiple factories around the world. So it's going to ship you're going to receive it in 15 to 20 business days. And just having that laid out on the site, they were like, oh, okay. So then they wouldn't email until it hit that time period. And then they would ask, where's the product? But before we were upfront about it, we were getting emails within a week saying, hey, it didn't ship. Where's my product? And it's true, especially when you're in the female apparel market. I know every time I buy a package, I have a notes document on my phone where I track the tracking numbers to see, hey, when's this coming? God. Yeah. And a lot of my girlfriends do this. They have Excel sheets. And so, especially if you're a big online shopper, I hate going to the mall. And so, that they're thinking about it. They just bought something. And a lot of times the customer's also saving up to buy something. They're really excited. They're getting it as a gift for someone. They treated themselves and they really want to receive the product. So if you're upfront and you let them know, hey, we're doing it, then at least they'll feel like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't ripped off.
Yeah, just being completely transparent with them. It's well, here's how long it's going to take. If you want to still be a customer and you still want this thing, here's what to expect, instead of trying to hide it and then they get pissed off because they had no idea.
And if they love it, they'll wait. And we can testify to that. Absolutely. We've had people wait a couple of months just to get a pair of Wander pants.
That's awesome.
And they still want them.
So actually, on this topic before, because I'm going to ask one last question before we wrap up, but this just brought something to mind, especially with e-commerce and stuff. my mind went towards like the software side of things. How do you create demand and how do you create scarcity? Because it's almost like, I mean, for you guys, you had the opposite problem when there was only so much. But then for like a company like ours, where like there's like we can do a limited edition shirt or something. Do we artificially say, hey, we're only going to sell 20 of them? Like we could make unlimited, but like there's only going to be 20 or 24 hours, and then we're taking it off the site. How would you guys create that kind of sense of urgency?
Yeah, a couple of things on this. Candace, the recent designer that we hired, what we've found interesting with her is her merchandising strategy is a lot more put together than what we did in the past. Like we would have a product in a color combination that would perform well. We just keep restocking that till it stopped performing as well. She immediately caught us restocking colors that aren't pertinent to certain seasons, and showed us how stale it makes the website to keep restocking something, even though it's continuing to sell. So for us, it was a bit of shift in perspective, like you're saying, of that creates no scarcity for people, that they're seeing things be restocked, even if there's a time frame where it's not there. So I think it's having things for a limited amount of time is a great strategy, whether it be colors or designs or anything. I have a suspicion that a lot of clothing companies are artificially creating demand, because at the end of the day, nobody knows what's actually in their warehouse and what isn't. So it'd be very easy to say things are sold out when they're not. I suspect that there's a lot of clothing companies out there that are doing that. Whether that's ethical or not, I think it's up for debate. What do you think?
I don't know if that's ethical, like if it's not actually in stock. I mean, unless there's a reason behind it, but if they're doing it maliciously to like get new sales later, I don't know if that's ethical per se. But like what we're thinking of doing is like, we will never do a red shirt or a green shirt, like never, because like our brand colors are Tino, our dog, is he's black, brown, and tan. Like we're only going to do really those and things around there. And like you said, like keeping, this is obviously thought, we're not really launched there, but we're launching only with like autumn colors. Like we're not going to do summer colors, we're not doing spring colors, we're only going autumn. Like and as each season unfolds, autumn will be gone. If you want that again, you're gonna have to wait till next year to get those autumn colors. And I mentioned doing red or green, and we were saying we only want to do red apparel during Christmas or Canada Day only. For like that week, done. 7 days, and then you're gonna have to wait till next year.
Yeah.
One company that does a great job with that is the Chive. If you've ever heard of that.
I used to love the Chive.
Dude, did you get any shirts?
I don't
Keep
think
calm and
so,
Chive
man.
on? Or like the Bill Murray?
No,
they would only have them for 24 hours.
That was my favorite app back in university.
Dude, I bought their clothing, and they were the first brands that kind of like opened my eyes to this. Were like they would have that Bill. It's called the Bill fucking Murray shirt. It's like Bill Murray wearing 3D glasses, and it would be on sale for like 24 hours, and it would sell out well before the 24 hours. So again, I don't know whether they actually had that much or they again artificially did it. Either way, it was very smart.
There's also a brand, so they're actually based out of Tulum, and they make really beautiful men's bathing suits, and it's called Krasky. And all of the colors and fabrics are actually locally sourced, like super high quality, beautiful, expensive men's bathing suits, and they actually number them. And I was in Tulum actually pre-COVID outbreak, and I was actually speaking to one of the owners at the store about it, and they were saying that they sell out so quickly because it actually shows you like this is number 5 of 22. There were only 22 made, and that's it. And then people don't sit and think about it as long because they're just like, oh, well, what are the chances that I'm going to find this bathing suit again? There's only 22 out there. I'm going to take it. And it's very similar to like the sneakerhead mentality where people know that there's only X amount of these out there and I want it. So why would I wait?
They don't even wear them.
No.
It's like collectibles. It actually becomes like an art It actually becomes not even collectible. They become investments. Yeah. It's a weird economy. Mm-hmm. It's so strange. So I think like really good. I mean, we're seeing that with like Yeezys and stuff like that. So I think we could see a lot of brands doing that, like collectibles. Like maybe there's only 5 of this.
Yeah.
Fuck it. We're launching with the golden wiener because we're in golden embroidery. 5 of them. Get a golden wiener. It's gone.
That's it's a gold member wiener.
Yeah. Well, they are German. Those dogs are German. So we just have
the Wiener dogs.
The Wiener dogs. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my God. You just unlocked a whole new ad angle for us.
We're taking a commish off the German wiener dog.
Dude, I told you, we'll definitely work with Foreplay, 100%.
Oh yeah,
100%, dude.
He'll send you the contract right after this.
Yeah, he'll shoot me the contract.
Yeah, neither Zach or I will read it. Just a heads up.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to ask you guys, one last question, because we're kind of getting over time now. What is something that you guys are super excited about, either in your industry, in business, in culture, society, just something? It doesn't even have to be one thing, just something that really excites you that's coming up.
Well, not to hit on all the things we already talked about, but I do feel like there's a huge opportunity for clothing brands right now. I feel like there's some big giants that are coming down that had a lot of exposure to COVID-19 that probably won't ever recover and be the giants that they were. There's a huge turnover. And, if people do it right and focus on the things that matter to our generation, that there's a huge opportunity in that. Mm-hmm. I think the e-commerce direct-to-consumer space continues to surprise people of how big it's going to be. So find all of that exciting.
That's cool. So what are just before we go on, what are some of those brands that you think are going to fall?
I mean, there's some of them that already are, right? Like Forever 21. I think there's a lot of big brands that are very focused on fast fashion.
Gap just closed like 100 locations.
Yeah, I think there's some companies like Lululemon that have made a good, point to have a very strong direct consumer portion of their business, that there's still a lot of companies lagging behind that. Like I'd put like Free People, which is one of our direct competitors in that category.
Yeah. And I think we did definitely touch on this throughout our conversation, but like the longer you're in the business, the more gaps that you see and the more opportunity for innovation. And so I think that's kind of the part that excites me the most. Is it's like, well, we are still a young company. We're so willing to pivot and we're not stuck in old ways. That's like, okay, the way that Shane and I have always operated is what's better for the business. Even if we have conflicting ideas or wants, it's like, okay, well, what's going to get the business further? All right, cool, let's do that. And so even talking about maybe creating our own warehousing, or, what kind of tech is available to make this easier. So every time we come across a problem, we ask ourselves like, okay, well, what's the ideal solution? Don't dwell on it for too long, but there's obviously a lot of opportunity out there as e-commerce is growing and more people are moving to work at home and then also shop at home, especially during Black Friday, with all of the restrictions in malls and in stores, more people are going to take to their couches and computers. And because of that, you're just going to see more and more opportunities for innovation.
I think another thing I'd add on there is like, what's exciting is seeing like really actual founder-led companies where the founder is the persona behind the brand. Yeah. I think a lot of companies, that's just going to start to become more and more of the norm, and companies that were built upon a board that nobody ever hears from or sees from, those companies will subtly become the background to these new direct-to-consumer brands that are run by the founder very publicly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree to that. So a book that I listened to last year was Black Stretchy Pants, which was written by Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon. And for any women who probably read or listened to the book, they probably cringed as much as I did, because he had this very much like white male savior mentality. And he's like, I am here to provide comfortable apparel to women, and I'm going to free you of your uncomfortable bras and pants. And you're sitting there and you're just like, shut the fuck up. And then as he goes through the book, you realize, okay, well, he was pushed out of the company for a reason. And it's interesting because he's telling his perspective of the story, and it's still so easy as a woman who's looking at a brand that's primarily selling towards women, how the things that he didn't see and the gaps that were there, and that the board saw it and he didn't. And so eventually it forced them to pushing him out. Now he only owns 10% of the company. And the very end of the book, it was his plea to his customers to like write to Lulu and to reach out to them and tell them that like the founder had to be at the forefront. And I think to Shane's point, it's really important that like the founders have to still understand the consumer and understand the brand and want to actually provide a good service for them. But don't be naive to think that like you are their God by any means.
Yeah, you're providing a service. Like you're in service to them. They are your God. They're the ones paying your bills. They're the one pushing the brand. 100%.
You're not liberating anyone.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I think you guys are doing a great job of like kind of the bottom up approach, everything from your hiring to how you view your customers, very customer centric, and, almost like a family led business, where I think you guys are just doing such an amazing job. So there's so much to learn. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Appreciate you having us.
Yeah. Well, Shane, Micha, thank you so much for coming on Mind Meld. We'll have to do this again. And Marissa's going to have to be on the next one.
Can't wait.
Love it.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
Bye.